You're watching CHCO-TV's gavel-to-gavel coverage of the July 2024 regular council meeting for the town of St. Andrews. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Florence Mitchell. Today's meeting begins with a public hearing of objections to amendments MP 20-02-03 to the secondary municipal plan and Z 22-09 to the zoning bylaw for 742039 New Brunswick Limited. Council will later move to grant leave for the first reading of these amendments. Senior Planner Alexander Gopin will present to Council on Amendment Z22-10 to the zoning bylaw for Harbortown Builders at 236 Mowat Drive. Council will later move to obtain views of the Planning Advisory Committee to this amendment and to set a date of August 6th at 6:30 p.m. for a public hearing of objections.
Under Planning and Community Development, Councillors Harland and Heenan will open a discussion on the NBCC housing project. Councillors Harland and Heenan will also move that Council enters into an encroachment agreement with John Irving at 325 Brandy Cove Road. Under Finance and Administration, Deputy Mayor Akaji will open a discussion on Bylaw 24-02, respecting the collection and disposal of solid waste. Deputy Mayor Akaji will also move that Council repeals Bylaw 16-01, respecting remuneration of Town Council.
Under Public Works and Public Safety, Councillors Bennett and Neal will open a discussion on the Market Square and Market Wharf project. Under Economic Development, Business and Culture, Councillors Hurdle and Weir will move that Council agrees to an 18-week pilot project with Kerry Rideshare, which includes a financial contribution of $18,000 to come out of the Economic Development budget.
Now let's join Council at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex Council Chambers.
All right, everyone, let's call to order this public hearing of objections meeting for Amendment MP 20-02-03 to the secondary municipal plan and Z 22-09 to the zoning bylaw Z 22-01 for the Algonquin Hotel for the town of St. Andrews. Here we are Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024, gathering at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex in the council chambers. In addition to this meeting being available for people in audience, in attendance, we are also going to be streamed through Zoom and Facebook. If anyone has anything regarding this meeting and you are watching via Facebook, I'd encourage you to log in through Zoom. But, this has a process to go through. If there's anything you want to send, whether it be support or objection regarding this project, it would be appreciated if you would email the town directly, which is probably the best one right now, be town@townofstandrews.ca. So let's get into the recording of attendance. All members of council are in attendance here, no one virtually, so thank you, council. And I do want to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotomogati people. Approval of the agenda. There is just the one item on this agenda, the hearing of objections, but I will be looking for an approval of the agenda. I've got Councillor Harlan and seconded by Councillor Heenan. Any changes to this agenda? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving this agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. So everybody, it's been carried. So here we are. We're into the recommended, the course of it tonight would be the hearing of objections for the town of St. Andrews in regards to 240702, the public hearing objections to amendment MP 20-02-03 to the secondary municipal plan, and Z 22-09 to the zoning bylaw agenda. So as it pertains to the Algonquin Hotel. I know there is a couple of members in attendance here this evening. We'll open the podium here in just a moment. Is there anyone that is logged in online, Mr. Spear?
If either of the participants online would like to speak at this meeting, please raise your virtual hand. One of the members is a proponent, the architect. Wasn't planning on speaking, I don't think, Your Worship. So, Mr. Bates, are you interested in speaking? I think we're good, Your Worship.
Okay, and now we'll open up to anyone in the audience that would like to speak pertaining to this agenda item. Floor is yours, sir. If you could just state your name and your address.
Did you want me to?
Yeah, that'd be great, so
introduce this?
anyone watching online can hear. Or
Wasn't
just,
quite
yeah,
expecting this, but-
just to kick off, just state your name and your address.
Mark Moore. I'm 326 Glebe Road. I'm a resident in Shamcook, but also co-owner of 4 Parr Street. So that's kind of how the reason that I'm here. Maybe first, like no objections, but just a question about process. Is this the only opportunity for the public to raise objections or concerns with the project?
Yeah, so normally, this isn't necessarily a Q&A, normally it's just your objection, but that's a fair for process, a question. So it's the only formal where you can come and have the mic and before a decision's made. We still have to go through all 3 readings. So you're welcome at those meetings to ask questions at the end of each of those meetings. However, the most effective way that I've personally ever seen is people that write their thoughts down and email it into council, whether it be a letter or just an email. You can submit those at any point, even after, but obviously you want to do that before the decision's made. But you at any time can email town hall to provide feedback, and it gets circulated to every member of council. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I mean, there was no way, we've never been informed directly of any expansion or change, like any of these plans. And as a neighbor, I thought that we would have heard. So is that, and I know this is more Q&A, but I'm just kind of like, I'm only finding out about this through kind of word of mouth and digging online to find out what the proposed changes were.
So, Mr. Spear, do you want to speak to the process? I know like PAC, if a variance is requested or something like that, there's a polling area, but want to speak specifically to the
Yes, Mr.
rezoning
Moore.
process?
Yeah, well, Mr. Moore, yeah, so I apologize for that, but we don't do polling letters for rezonings at this current time, and so I guess rightfully or wrongfully, we ask that members of the public keep tuned into our website and things to keep on top of what's happening, but maybe something we need to talk about in the future, but right now our procedures are not to poll for rezonings.
Okay. So if it's not an objection, if it's just a concern, is this the forum for it, or?
100%. We'd love to
Okay.
hear any concerns, for
Yeah,
sure.
and my business partner, Dan McPhee, he'd be here also, but he just couldn't be. But our primary concern are the trees along the back of our lot, because based on the plan that I've seen online, there will be like units, lower units that will kind of face our property. So we're right straight across the street here at 4 Parr, so just down the hill from O'Brien House. So this has to pertain with O'Brien, not with the spa. And so I see in the amendment to the bylaw that there is, protection for the trees. We're just wondering, like, what that means, because, you can say that there's protection for the trees, but if the construction crew arrives and limbs are being chopped off and excavation, 5 feet from the trunks of the trees, those trees aren't gonna be there long, they'll be dead. And so that's our concern, is maintaining kind of that buffer between our property and the new construction up the hill from us.
Perfect, thank you. Just for your aware, the feedback's good. This rezoning could be subject to terms and conditions as set by council. So that's where that would be accounted for if council shares those concerns. But thank you for bringing it to the attention of council.
Yeah, okay. So then as far as follow-up, is that better done through just an email to,
That would be the best bet for sure.
yeah, to you, Chris? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience like to speak? No? All right, and online, we did not have a hand, correct?
The proponent wasn't looking to speak either. Would you like to ask them if they wanted to speak to it?
No,
Okay.
no.
Nope.
They haven't raised their hand, then
Yeah.
we'll keep it
Yeah.
moving. All right, so council, we have, did the calling virtually in the room. So at this point, there wouldn't be question period as part of this one, so I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn the first meeting. We got Councillor Neal and seconded by Deputy Mayor Akchi. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody, we are adjourned. Next meeting will start in about 4 minutes. All right, council, let's call to order the regular council meeting for the town of St. Andrews, Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. This meeting is at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex, also being streamed through Zoom and Facebook. If anyone has any questions regarding tonight's agenda, please email cspear@townofstanders.ca as it pertains to the agenda. We'll do our best during question period to answer it. All right, let's get into the recording of attendance. Again, all members of council are in attendance, and I also want to recognize that we're on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskoto-Mogadi people. Before we begin, I do want to speak to a town employee that we lost last week. She unfortunately passed away, Carrie Kruss, and Carrie was a 19-year employee for the town of St. Andrews. Most people know her obviously through the Ross Museum. So there is a little write-up that her children put online, and it kind of sums up a little bit of who she is. It says that it is with deepest sadness that we share the unexpected loss of her mother, Carrie Ann Kruss. Her mom gave us such an amazing childhood and friendship as adults, and we are so proud to be her children. After overcoming illness, she lived this last year as a victory lap in all her glory, and how glorious she was. A more vibrant and colorful person is rarely found. Carrie is loved so much, being Nana Carrie, and imparted her love and enthusiasm for nature, reading, and art to her grandchildren. She was so proud of all of her friends and loved all of the activities, crafts, rug hooking, her book club. And there are so many beautiful things to say about her. The way she lived her life. Above all, she never took the joys in life for granted. Flowers and sunsets, motherhood, good spices, chocolate, shopping, fashion, friendships, parties, British TV music, dancing, giggles, and a great book. She embraced it all. So they hope that everyone could take a moment to reflect on their lovely mom, the beauty in her life, and making the world a kinder place. So I'll ask council if we could just take a moment of silence before we begin the meeting. Her thoughts are with her family right now. Let's move council into the agenda for this evening. I do need a mover to get it on the floor. We've got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Councillor Bennett. Council, there's a mover and a seconder. I would like to propose, as you heard earlier from Mr. Spear, two new things under new business. That there's a discussion on the trail project and an overage, as well as a discussion they'd like to add on no parking as it relates to Princess Royal and Pagan Street. So could I have a mover for that amendment, if anyone? So supports it, Councillor Gumashall, seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. All in favor of those amendments, please signify by saying aye. Those have been added in. Any other amendments? Okay, I will call the question then on the original. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. That is everybody, so that has been approved. Okay, council, we are now getting into the presentations.
Recording in progress.
Alex Henderson is here, senior planner. He is going to be, I assume for Mr. Gopin, presenting on Amendment Z22-10 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for Harbortown Builders. Have PIDs 15025083, 01326214, and 01325406. Otherwise known as 236 Mowat Drive. Mr. Henderson, the floor is yours.
Your Worship, I'm actually swapping here with Xander Gopin, who's online actually for tonight's presentation. So I'll turn it to him.
You're just here for body presence.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I was under the impression. Welcome, Mr. Gopin. We were concerned.
Issue he's got to sign on in a minute, maybe jump to the acceptance of the minutes and we'll get him on.
That sounds good then. Wouldn't have given him such a fancy introduction had I known that. Okay. Council, we have a few sets of minutes here. I'll go, since it's only three, I'll go through the traditional way of doing it. Minutes of the 240603 public hearing of objections to amendment bylaw MP 20-09 to the municipal plan, MP 20-01, and Z 22-08 to the zoning bylaw, Monday, June 3rd, 6:30 p.m. So could I have a mover to accept those minutes? I've got Councillor Heenan and Councillor Blanchard for those minutes. Any changes to those ones? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Okay, the next motion is that the minutes of the 24:06:03 regular council meeting on Monday, June 3rd and Monday, June 10th, 2024, 6:45 and 6:30 p.m. be adopted. Got Deputy Mayor Akagi and seconded by Councillor Heenan again. Discussion on those ones? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Again, that's everybody, and this is the minutes of the minutes of the 24:06:17 regular council meeting on Monday, June 17th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. be adopted. That was by a landslide. That was Councillor Harland. Yeah, secondary by Councillor Neal. Any changes to those ones? All in favor of adopting the last set of minutes, please signify by saying aye. Okay, Mr. Spear, do you want to jump into your staff report while we wait?
Earlier tonight, we had an updated presentation on a proposal for Harbortown. Well, we will have an updated presentation from Harbortown Builders. These things are all built in your mind before you start typing them a week ago, for a new pocket village of new homes for ownership. The homes are small compared to typical builds, but are more energy efficient, which will be a benefit to future owners. However, with a tremendous amount of new development in the area, it will add additional traffic to one of the main entrances to town. That said, a traffic study completed last year indicated that except for small periods of times in the day, these new units will have a minimal impact on traffic volume. With the struggles with rural transportation being experienced not only locally, but across Canada, Mayor and Council are always interested in any initiative that may ease this burden for many citizens. Carry Ride service is already operating out of the municipal district of St. Stephen. Now they have expressed an interest in coming to St. Andrews, but will need to partner with Council to run a pilot project over the next few months. Staff have carried forward a request for financial assistance to help them absorb a portion of the costs related to operating in a small population area. Staff have prepared an analysis of multiple residential properties within the town. We are waiting further direction on how to incorporate this information into the proposed solid waste bylaw and to initiate a garbage collection tender that needs to go out this summer. Administrative. The washrooms at Indian Point are near completion, with the landscaping completed and the pathways filled in with brick. The washrooms were facing a supply chain issue as the handbars and rails that enabled it to be accessible were delayed being delivered, but it was opened by Canada Day. Staff and the contractors have done a great job as the facility looks fantastic and has been receiving compliments, even though it wasn't open until recently. We began the municipal plan consultation with an open house in Shamcook last Tuesday night. We had 35 people present, which I am appreciative as it is a new process for those in Bayside and Shamcook. We continue again tomorrow night, July 3rd at Bayside Hall. Then again Monday, July 8th in the dining room here at the arena, and then wrap up this phase through a virtual presentation on Wednesday, July the 10th. All meetings start at 6 p.m. There's more information available on the town website as well as the survey for this phase of the consultation. The wharf project is nearing the end of the design phase, which includes permitting and preparing tenders. We are moving along, but have multiple stakeholders we are engaging and need to make sure they are working cooperatively and congruently to keep us within our narrow timelines. We meet regularly with the planners on a bi-weekly basis to keep each other abreast of developments, upcoming bylaw requests, etc. We are finding that the planning interacts with other bylaws related to property usage or purposes, so we are creating additional internal procedures to ensure staff are considering all the facts when providing routine authorizations as allowed by council. The request for proposals for the Recreation Master Plan is closing later this week. We have had 20 organizations express interest, so I'm hopeful that we will get a competitive bid as well as a variety of methodologies to consider. In services, early in the spring, Council approved new directional signs for tourists to replace signs that have been in service for more than 20 years. The order was placed several months ago, but there have been a delay in receiving the signage. Due to its historic look, it needs to be produced at a special manufacturer outside of our usual provider, and unfortunately, they have been slow to deliver. Staff have been chasing them down and hope to have them resolved in the next few weeks. The fire department continues to respond to an unusually high volume of calls over the last couple of years. Remembering the Stein Lake fire was only a year ago, we must do better in lowering the risk of another disaster like that. They have responded to out-of-control bonfires this spring that had the potential of being much bigger. However, the people attending the fires realized they were in trouble and made the right decision in calling 911. Everyone needs to pay attention to the fire index as applied by the province and abide by it. If you know we're in a fire ban situation and you see one going, please call 911 so they can alert the fire department to come extinguish it before it spreads into the woods. The youth center is going to its summer hours, which are from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. During the summer months, events are held that can cater to a younger age group than traditionally through the rest of the year. Please reach out to the Recreation Department or follow them on Facebook to see more of the activities that will be going on that may interest elementary-aged school children. The bylaw enforcement officer is making his rounds daily to identify anything from parking infractions and illegal structures to zoning concerns. In the past, we have had concern expressed about the number of warnings that were being issued, but now we are getting more complaints about the lack of enforcement. Bylaw enforcement by nature is more reactive than preventative, so even if we issue warnings and tickets, it means people are already in a state of non-compliance. Our officer works hard to give people verbal warnings in order to bring them into compliance, but we still see a slew of repeat offenders. We appreciate the public's patience in this endeavor. In conclusion, the municipal plan consultation is ongoing, and we hope to see many of our community members attend to provide council direction over the next decade. There will be other opportunities for feedback as we get further in the process, but we appreciate as much feedback as possible. Be sure to frequently check out the notice boards, the town and St. Andrews Parks and Recreation Facebook pages, or the town's website to see all the events to keep you entertained and amazed this summer. Respectfully submitted, Chris Beer, Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Appreciate it. Council, any questions on that or anything within the financial report that is in your package? Okay, I'm not seeing any this evening, so I'll be looking for a mover to accept the staff report as presented. I've got Councillor Blanchard, seconded by Councillor Heaton again. All in favor of approving the staff reports, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. It's been approved. And now we're about to get into consideration passing of bylaws, but as Mr. Gopin...
Can we take a 5-minute recess? I have to call him to...
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Can I have a motion to recess for 5 minutes? Okay. Deputy Mayor Akaji, seconded by...
Recording stopped.
I guess we're good. No, Councillor
sorry.
Bennett, sorry. All in favor of recess, please signify by saying aye. And we're in recess. All right, Council, I'll be looking for a motion to come out of closed session.
Recess.
Recess. That's a habit.
Recording in
Councillor Bennett
progress.
had the first hand, and I saw one to the left. I don't know, Deputy Mayor Akaji. All in favor of coming out of recess, please signify by saying aye. We're out of recess. Welcome, Mr. Gopin. This is a presentation regarding Amendment Z22-10 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for Harbortown builders at PIDs 150258083 and 01326214 and 013254008, which is otherwise known as 236 Mowat Drive. Mr. Gopin, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now let's see, we'll share my screen.
We can see it, Xander. Thank you.
Great. So this is, I guess it's an updated and final proposal for something that council saw back in February or March. I can't remember, but there was a presentation from Harbortown about a 4-unit small kind of house development off of Mowat Drive. And they wanted to sort of expand what they were doing and wanted to buy a little bit of property next to them. And they managed to buy the whole property. And so they've kind of doubled what they were thinking of doing. And it's changed a little bit. And it is at the point where council can consider starting the zoning bylaw amendment process if you so choose. So as the mayor said, these PIDs make up 236 Mowat Drive. I think there used to be a house on one of these PIDs it's since been demolished. They're all in the serviced residential zone. Combined, they make up about an acre and a half lot. There is on the larger PID, and I've got maps and everything. The larger PID does have a house and garage, and the house would remain. I think the garage would get demolished. So what started as one lot with 4 units on it is now a public road subdivision, which would create 8 new lots. It would end up being 9 in total. The new lots would be 3,200 to 5,500 square feet. Each lot would have an approximately 640 square foot stick-built dwelling unit with a basement. 5 lots would have a garage. And one of the reasons this is coming to council is that it requires a number of fairly significant variances. So the minimum floor area is 800 square feet in the zone, and these would only be 640. The minimum lot size is a little over 8,000 square feet, and these ones, they're from 3,200 to 5,500. And the minimum lot frontage is 80 feet, and all of these are around 40 feet. So these are, there probably are lots that are this small in the plat, but they're kind of historical remnants. And today you couldn't subdivide this small, but it is a new concept. And as you'll see, there are some municipal plan and provincial policies that point in the direction of supporting such a proposal. So this is the zoning currently. Does back onto it's a vacant property that's owned by the municipality, currently zoned MR2. And then this is the motel. And there's 2 lots here. That was the initial area, and then this lot was acquired. So the whole new lot is outlined in red. And there's the aerial view. This house and structure here are no longer there. They're gone. These are some site photos from the other day. This is where those structures were. And this is looking in the, it's a right-of-way, a 5.5 meter right-of-way that accesses the property off to the right here and the property in the back. And that right-of-way part of it would become a public road, and the other part would remain as a right-of-way, so it wouldn't impact the access to the properties in the rear. This is an aerial view from just a few days ago, what everything looks like. And this is the site plan. So this would all be a new public road, public right-of-way, land for public purposes as required by the subdivision bylaw. And then the private driveways continuing, so access for these lots will not be affected. And then you can see how the lots are laid out. This is the existing house. And these are some images of the structures. And these are some renderings. Lots of renderings. So looking at some legislation, statements of public interest are provincial regulations under the Community Planning Act. One of them talks about promoting a range of housing options such as size, type, density, and design. And in the user guide for those public statements of public interest, there is even a quote that planning documents should consider inclusive neighborhoods, including special housing community, for example, tiny homes, and proximity to services and other residential neighborhoods. So that is talking more about if you're creating a new zoning bylaw, but it's certainly relevant for this application and for thinking about amendments to zoning bylaws as well. The municipality's own municipal plan talks about efficient and sustainable land use and development patterns, mix of uses and densities. And these are, tiny or smaller homes are much more efficient. There's less space to heat or to cool. They're go
We may have lost him. Give just another moment. Otherwise, we might have to come back to it. Too soon.
So,
Oh, he's back.
small.
Oh, he might be rapping.
Can anybody hear me?
You're back. Yep.
Can you go back one slide, Xander? We lost you for a couple of minutes.
Did a little bit cut out.
A lot did. Yeah.
Where did we leave off? Had we
Just
gone through the
when you're
renderings?
starting to talk about the statements of public interest, you're just getting started on
Okay.
those when you cut out.
All right, back there. So this statement speaks about promoting a range of housing options such as size, type, density, and design. In the user guide, this is a quote directly from that for these statements. Planning documents should consider inclusive neighborhoods, including special housing communities such as tiny homes in close proximity to services and other residential neighborhoods. And this proposal is right along a serviced street and in an existing residential neighborhood. There's some commercial development around it. Looking at the municipal plan, a policy relating to environment and climate change, supporting efficient and sustainable land use and development patterns with a mix of uses and densities, supporting pedestrian movement. So there's already a sidewalk just across the street from here. It's not that far from the downtown area, from schools. So it's a good location, and as well, you could see the solar panels on the roofs. I think tiny homes or smaller homes, they're much more efficient. They're easier to heat and cool. They take less energy, and my understanding from the proponents is they're trying to get as close to net zero as possible to make them not only efficient but also hopefully more affordable in the long run, even though it may be a little bit more expensive up front to have those high levels of efficiency. Speaking of housing, shall be a policy of council to understand the need for the development of housing to meet the needs of seniors, students, and other special needs populations. Council shall ensure that new or converted housing for these populations is appropriate to the character of the town. So this would be sort of a not entirely new. You have townhouses already that are roughly about this size, and they have some of their own lot, but these would be kind of a new offering in town of a completely fee simple lot with a yard, even though it is fairly small. And from talking with a lot of folks doing the municipal plan background study, great to see the amount of apartments are being added to town and approvals that are going ahead for those. But people do want ownership options as well. People want to have a yard. So this is a great way to add more diversity. And the developers are aiming to make these as affordable as possible while also trying to make them as efficient as possible. So I covered that. It would need several large variances, as I mentioned in the first slide. And we've been, as we are coming up to sort of the end of this zoning bylaw, we're starting to work on a new one, but we're not quite there yet. We've seen a few things that are kind of taking a more modern approach, and these would be one of those. So rather than try and amend an existing zone, when you have a project like this, just kind of like with aspects of the Algonquin, an integrated development zone is one way to deal with that gives council a lot of control over the final product. One thing I think that's really important is this would look very different if all of the buildings were the same color. They're all white or yellow, it would look very different than them all having their own colors. I think that's actually a really important part of making this work and sort of fit into the character of town, so it doesn't look like a homogeneous development, and speaks to a lot of the sort of maritime vernacular with those multicolored homes that you'll see. I mean, not quite so much in St. Andrews, but certainly in other maritime communities. This one new aspect of this, as opposed to what council heard earlier, is it's a subdivision with a new public road. So that is a more involved process. As well as dealing with the zoning, we also have to deal with the creation of a new public street, land for public purposes. It's been proposed on the site plan in certain places, but council can certainly get involved in that process, as it would be council's land in the end. PAC will have to make a recommendation on that, as well as the location of the public street. There also would need to be a stormwater management plan. While none of the lots would be over the lot coverage area in terms of structures, you are adding a lot of new pavement and impervious surfaces. So having a really good stormwater plan to make sure that everything is going to existing drains and not onto neighboring properties is super important, and as part of the subdivision process. So those aspects are under review by staff. There have been some initial discussions with the town's public works team. None of that would really happen until the rezoning has gotten significantly underway. But just to make sure that this is feasible, those discussions have started. And that's really it. I think you do have some agenda items related to this. And I guess I can answer questions now or at that time, whatever is council's pleasure.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Gopin. Council, any questions for the planner? Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. I am to assume these are going to be sold off. Is that correct, Mr. Gopin?
Yes, I believe they will be sold as lots with a house on it.
They will. Do we really think that there could be a market for these in the town of St. Andrews? The reason I ask is because when I did the readings, first off, there's bedrooms in the basement. And I just, I don't know if there will be, I'm not sure of the price point either. Has there been a price point for these houses pointed out to anybody?
I don't know if the developer is there. If they are, they'd be the best person to answer that question, and also as to whether they think there's a market. I mean, typically developers won't start a project unless they believe there is a market for that. And there have been, well, it's not exactly the same, the Van Horn Garden Homes, Victoria Terrace, they're kind of a similar model. And my understanding is those are in very high demand. I guess the Van Horn Garden Homes are rentals, but
yes,
Victoria Terrace, my understanding is all of those have been sold to this point.
No, I'm just concerned about like what the price point would be, because it would take a specific individual to buy something that's 640 square feet.
Yeah. Again, I don't know. I'm guessing the developer is not there. I haven't had anybody jump up.
The developer is
in my
not
conversation with them.
Sorry, Xander, to interrupt. I just letting you know the developer is not present.
Okay. Again, they're the best person to answer that question, and the longer projects take these days, especially the more things increase in cost. What I've heard is they're looking in the $300,000 to $400,000 range.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gopin.
Any other member of council? Got Councillor Gumashel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Gopin, there was a proposal came forward on the last council for a development down in this area, and I was just wondering, and pertinent to what Mr. Moore had said about being pulled, I'm wondering if the neighbors have been pulled. There's 2 houses down in there. Would they know about this? I see one of them here.
This is the first. I mean, there was a presentation to council before. The formal process hasn't actually started yet, so it would be up to council to start that tonight.
Okay, thank you.
If they want it.
My second question would be for staff. When a development came up just up the road by Tim Hortons, there was a suggestion of adding sidewalk. And in the staff report that came back, they said that town staff said if there was any more sidewalk, we'd have to get, we didn't have enough staff to plow and those sorts of things. So I'm just wondering about the implications of adding another town road, or just kind of flagging that. That'd be for Mr. Spear, I guess.
Yeah, so it's a little different because it's a road, because we only have one machine that can do the sidewalks. And so we're kind of to stretch with that one machine of continuing. But the plows do have capacity. We did ask at this point. They're still within the Clark Road division, so it's staying close.
Thank you. And one more thing. Thank you, Mr. Spear. And the last question I had is, in the corner, I don't know the directions, but in the corner closest to the existing entrance, there's a little building I was looking on Google Earth. There's a little building. I'm wondering, what is that building? Is it a garden shed, or is it a water supply building? Oh, gotcha. Okay. So we'll be letting the neighbors know and whatnot moving forward.
Perfect. I'll go to you 1 second, Councillor Harlan. Just a couple of follow-ups on Councillor Gumachel's. I guess one's more of a comment. So there's several variances that are required, but if we create a new zone essentially for this, it bypasses the variances. So the variances would require us to pull the neighbors, and if we create a new zone, we don't have to pull the neighbors. That doesn't seem right? So I think as part of this, pulling the neighbors is something that absolutely would have to happen. My question, kind of based on your comments on capacity that comes from that, is the land for public purposes, would Public Works be in charge of mowing that land, or would that be the developer that maintains that?
The anticipation would be that it would be Public Works, as for public purposes typically means it's us. And I mean, in the end, the developer's going to develop this, then then you'll have the homeowners on their parcels, and everything else will become property of the town of St. Andrews if council so chooses to go down that road.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spear. I just question if it wouldn't feel like a private community, and then the town would be maintaining it just for these houses, right? Because people would think that it was kind of their own community little park, right? So just something for consideration. Councillor Harlan.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. So Xander, in a proposal like this, where it is structured so that it looks like its own little community, but the parcels of land are individually owned, right? So every house that is purchased, the land around it is purchased by an individual owner. Would there be an intention or an expectation that a community like this have an HOA, or how so in the end you said that there was 8 homes, is that right?
There would end up being 9 with the existing home that's there.
Right. So when they're built, there would be some uniformity to the look and feel.
Yeah.
Because the builders, the developers, are creating a community with a very certain kind of look and feel. But then you are selling them to individual homeowners. Would then the look and feel potentially be drastically changed? Because in my home, I can choose to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah, that's certainly possible. Homeowners associations, I mean, there would certainly be no requirement in this case where there's no common area, that it's a public road. There's no common public spaces. So in terms of maintenance, there's no need for a homeowners association. There may be conditions that could run with the land around how the properties could be further developed, if that's a concern of council. So that's certainly something we could explore if that's a concern.
Right, and just to follow up, because you had referenced the fact that we currently in the town have townhouses that are approximately the same size, but there's uniformity.
A little bigger, yeah.
They're a little, yeah, but there's uniformity to the look and feel of that development. That would be the one thing that, You know, I think about driving in and seeing that small community, and what that could look like at the beginning of the process and what it could look like 10 years down the road could be very, very different.
Yeah, yeah. So there may be conditions. I mean, I guess the question is, does council think that this development requires that sort of special attention? Because the plat people can do not whatever they want, but there's if you want to change the color of your home, there's nothing stopping you. So I guess it's, this would be a fairly prominent location, and council was involved in decisions around the siding of not the beacon, the compass, right up the road from here. So there's probably a condition to deal with it. Not quite sure off the top of my head what that would be, but that could be part of the integrated development zone, moving forward as we sort of figure out what those parameters are.
Thank you. I'll go back one second. Any other member of council that hasn't asked yet? I'll go back for second round for sure, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Blanchard.
Well, just on, I guess, conditions, looking at this, just thinking about Airbnbs and things of that nature, where these are homes to be purchased. I think, the expectation from council would be that we're adding more housing units as opposed to more short-term rental units. Certainly a small dwelling such as that, I think, they look very much like a seaside cottage kind of a feel, right? And I'm very much in favor of small homes or the tiny home type concept. I think that's a great idea for the community. I would just want to see more housing units as opposed to short-term rentals. So I'm just wondering about, I think we have that power within, if we're rezoning something, to put in conditions like that. I know we have in some other zoning type, in some other types of zones, you're limited and restricted in terms of the purposes or the uses, I guess, right? So I assume we would have the same authority.
We can. We're essentially creating this zone.
Yeah.
So we can attach technically any terms and conditions that reason what we want.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's something well within the right of doing so. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Councillor Harlan, I like where you're going with your questions. That's some very valid points to give good consideration. Thank you for that. The one thing I would like to know, if you could please, the road on that property, would that be like a normal street width road, like that's a proper size road? Is there any issues with like getting something large like a fire truck in on that little lot? Because you said it's only like 1.52 acres and with 9 dwellings on it. Do you think that road is certainly sufficient to get our large fire trucks down? Thank you.
So it would meet the requirements of the subdivision bylaw, and we do a public works review everything like this, and that includes the fire department. But no, we don't have any concerns around that. Usually a 6-meter roadway is sufficient for a fire truck, and this one I believe is 10 meters with 10-meter right of way with a 6-meter roadway. So it should be fine. And in fact, the initial development, there's a lot of the lot that would not even need within 90 meters of the hydrant. I think they can reach. So again, it's something for Public Works and the fire department to make the final determination on. But based on all the standards that we have, no concerns there.
Thank you. Could I ask that?
Yeah, go ahead.
That before we get too carried away in approving anything, that be something passed by Public Works and our safety specialists to ensure that this certainly meets all the requirements that it needs to for public safety.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That can be reviewed for sure. Just on Councillor Bennett's comments, so there's a lot of paving here, and some of them are actually like almost paved extensions to people's driveway that were right away. So is the expectation that the developer pays for these almost extensions that you're seeing in the diagrams that are paved to, say, the house at the back of the existing? It looks like it's jetting and it's paved. Is the developer going to pave that for them?
That's a great question for the developer. As it's a private driveway, it would not become council's responsibility if it was paved. It could just be the way it's rendered. I would not necessarily assume that's their intention.
Okay, just because when council visualizes this, it would be really good if council knew exactly what it was going to look like, and if it was going to be a bunch of dirt roads coming into it, I think council, maybe they're fine with it, but I think the package that we have before us says this is going to happen, is the way I interpret it. Mr. Spear?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess there's just a couple of things. Don't forget, similar to other developments we've done, council can control all of this phases of development and put the terms and conditions like we have in other developments that we've done. So they're great questions, but to be determined. And again, we haven't gone to a hearing of objections even yet. So this is good stuff to bring back to the developer. It should be noted the developer is not assuming, but asking for the council to take over the road once it's completed. But that's still up to your determination if that's what you want to do. If we don't take it over, it lessens their responsibilities as far as what type of standards and stuff, because it basically becomes a private roadway. But they prefer to develop and, not worry about paving and all that stuff. And to Councillor Harlan's suggestion, get into a homeowners association or anything like that wasn't their intent. So, but that's all part of the discussion with the council and eventually with the developers. The other thing, it left me. My apologies. Oh, actually, I guess, Your Worship, you said about that this integrated zone was kind of bypassing all these variances. It's not really bypassing, is that we knew from the get-go this particular development couldn't fit under our zoning bylaws. It just never anticipated. And so I just don't want people to get the thoughts or that we're trying to pull something on anybody. We're not. It's just this type of development does not fit anywhere. It'd be impossible for us to do, and that's why as we get going I've asked the planners to say, well, if this was a normal residential zone, what would be some of the things that we'd be concerned about? So it's a special zone in order to have this very unique type of development within the town.
Yeah, fair enough. So what I'm saying is not deliberately, but it is skipping part of the process, though. So if neighbors normally get polled and we're rezoning it and then we're not reaching out to them, we are skipping part of the process. We're not reaching out to them, right? So
we never reach out for rezoning, Your Worship.
That's the point, right? So we're rezoning something which is going to avoid variances, a specialized zone, and normally that would go to PAC. There'd be a notice. They'd have a chance to.
Well, it depends, Your Worship. I don't want to get in a big debate with you, but let's say we had something like Compass with MR2. That was a rezoning. It had to have its own create. The zone was already created, and our bylaw was different than that. That didn't go to polling.
True, but what we could do is just send this to PAC right now, and then they would have to review each variance.
That wouldn't work because it wouldn't fit in a zone. There's no zone for it to apply to.
Okay.
Well,
anyway, I don't want to get into a big discussion, but I guess
the
bigger lesson is we should start polling the neighbors on future rezonings, which staff have heard.
Especially when it's something new that we haven't done before, right?
can I just make a few process
For sure.
points on that? So the Community Planning Act requires mail out notices for variances, or it strongly encourages them. For rezonings and bylaw amendments, it requires a notice that goes on the website. So that's the bare minimum. And that doesn't mean you can't go above and beyond it. And I think in the past, for even some more significant rezonings, council has decided to do mail out. So there's nothing stopping you. And I think our job is partly to make sure that you're following the required process, but you can certainly go above and beyond that. And then the second note on the land for public purposes, you can accept that as, a new park or whatever that you would have to maintain, or if you feel that there's enough green space in the general area, sort of trying to think if what else is around you. It's not too far from the sports fields. There's certainly been cases where council accepts cash in lieu, and that's allowed for in the subdivision bylaw. So you don't have to take land for public purposes if you don't think you need it or would be well used by the community and the public. You can say we'd rather have cash, and you can use that to develop the existing parks you have or a new park in another location.
Perfect. I got the gist of that. I know Councillor Heaton's had his hand up. Is there anyone that hasn't spoke yet that wanted to speak? Councillor Heaton, we'll go to you.
I thought I heard Councillor Neal. Anyway, I totally agree with Councillor Harland. It needs to have an HOA. And the reason I say this is because if it's a pod community and people are living so close together, there may be someone who doesn't mow their lawn, et cetera, et cetera. We compare this to Victoria Terrace. Victoria Terrace has HOAs that guarantees that they're all mowed at the same day, they're all done, everything is conducive. You can't have things, I know you say that downtown, people can do and change their houses or whatever, and I understand that, but they also are on a lot. Like they're on a plat lot. They're not 9 homes in a certain close area. So in order to have it not turn into a mobile home park, where they all go down and someone doesn't want to mow their lawn or they do want to mow their lawn, it has to be looked after. And we can't afford not to do that at the very beginning. So I would only support something if it had some sort of a homeowners association that would take possession of everything within the roads that run around. I mean, that's the only way it could ever work and look right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Any other member of council? Again, this is just starting the process. There'll be probably lots more to come, and we probably asked a lot more questions than maybe for the starter project, but it is something that we haven't done before, so it's good to see council's engagement. And I will say, obviously, myself asked a lot of questions today, but one thing's for sure, I bet you the price point, there is a market for it. There's the, I guess, the intro pricing to homes in St. Andrews is well over $500,000. There's a lot of people that can't afford a mortgage that high. So I do think there is a market for a project like this, but I think that just there's some logistic answers that we're going to need as we go through this project. Thank you, council. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Gopin.
You're welcome.
All right, council, we are now into the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions, and we are going over to Councillor Heaton.
I heard my name that time, Your Worship. Oh, all right. Page 69. It is in reference number PCD 2405-01. Amendments MP 20-02-03 to the secondary municipal plan MP 20-02 and 22-09 to the zoning bylaw Z 22-01 for PIDs 151-64718 and 013-24284 for 742-039 in B Limited first reading. The town of St. Andrews has received a secondary municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendment request for PIDs 151-64718 and 013-24284 for 742-039 in B Limited, the Algonquin Resort. The applicant is seeking to move from the tourist commercial zone to integrated development zone to carry out a special purpose development on 2 different areas of land. The proposed plan would not fit within the tourist commercial zone and would not conform with the height and massing requirements of the secondary municipal plan. Please see the details attached planning report from Mr. Henderson, Director of Planning, for more details. The following is the bylaw process to follow. Public presentation was held on May 6, 2024. Obtain views of the PAC May 17, 2024. Obtain views of the Heritage Board May 17, 2024. Public hearings of objections July the 2nd, that's this evening, 2024. Then we would have first, second, third, and final reading. Council has received feedback from the public, the Planning Advisory, and the Heritage Board. It is recommended that Council discuss potential terms and conditions for the USVA Spa and O'Brien House. This will allow developer time to adjust the plans based on the feedback from Council. Terms and conditions are applied before the third and final reading. Council can move to first reading on both amendments. One of the actions in motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews grants leave for the first reading to Amendment MP 20-02-03 to the Secondary Municipal Plan MP 20-02 for PIDs 15164-718 and 01324-284 for 742039 in B Limited Algonquin Hotel. I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heaney, a seconder. Good, Councillor Harland, so it's on the table. Council, I do note that you do have before you another design for the spa that we haven't really discussed, but it looks like, Mr. Spearman, I don't know if you want to speak, but it does look like it's the same design as the previous. The difference is the red roof, correct?
The red roof, and council had concerns over the yellowishness, if that's such a word, of the previous building, which was, I guess, cedar shingle or clapboard. And now they're suggesting that they'll whitewash the outsiding to kind of conform more closely to the design of the current building.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Council, the motion is on the table. Any questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Akji.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I like the red roof, and I like the fact that it's whiter than what we were given before, because I didn't like the yellow color. So, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other member of council? Okay, I will ask the question then. All in favor of going to first reading? Yeah.
First reading.
Please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That is everybody, so we will go to first reading. Bear with me one quick second. Okay, so this is by title. This is bylaw number MP 20-02-03, a bylaw to amend bylaw number 20-02, being the secondary municipal plan bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. So it's read the first time on the second day of July 2024. Next motion.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The next motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews grants leave for the first reading to the amendment Z22-09 to zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PIDs 15164-718 and 01324-284 for 742039 in B Limited Algonquin Hotel. I so move.
Thank you. Once again, a seconder. Okay, Councillor Hurdle, discussion on this one? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of going to first reading for this one, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
That's everybody. This is bylaw number Z22-09, a bylaw to amend bylaws number Z22-01, being the zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. And that has been read the first time, the second day of July of 2024.
Your Worship, sorry, just to continue along this a little bit, you've heard from the meeting of objections tonight, plus you've had letters from the PAC and the Heritage Committee. And I guess, you know, right now, it'd be good to discuss if there's any significant terms and conditions that council is considering, because this is all designed, they'd like to get the ground broken this fall on it. And so if you throw some big curveball at them at the last minute, it could thwart their plans. So I'm hoping you have some discussion ability. But the Director of Planning also had a comment, Your Worship, if he's okay to speak about that.
Yeah, actually, I'll pass it over to Mr. Henderson, then we'll go to council.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think you received an updated rendering from the architect there showing the red roof and then the whitewashed walls, which the architect and I communicated about that. I just received those plans today. And basically, the architect is proposing something which he believed responded to some of the commentary council gave at the last meeting. So what I would suggest before you go to third reading is to, we can provide an amended version of the resolution that's attached to the bylaw. So specifically Clause 9, which talks about the cladding. It's just generic at the moment. But before third reading, you could specify to say that cladding and roofing materials as per, and we could possibly include the rendering the architect supplied if that's council's desire. Also just spell out in that clause what that actually entails. So whitewashed wooden clapboard and roofing materials with a red color consistent with the current Algonquin roofing material color. And that way you have that sort of harmonious design that council was concerned about.
Perfect. I think we can get consensus on that pretty quick. I think council, I think everybody probably prefers the newer design. Is that safe to say? Just a quick show of hands. Yeah, so that would be a term and condition then of it. Is there any other, to the point of our CAO and the planner, is there any other terms and conditions that we should bring forward that haven't been discussed? Mr. Spear, go ahead.
I think for the neighbor, it would be typical where they asked to include a buffering of those trees that we heard earlier tonight for the O'Brien House part of it.
Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
If I may, also, that actually was considered in the original recommended resolution, so you can see that in one of the clauses here, but it specifies that even the caliper width of trees, so clause 6, any living trees with 1.5-inch caliper width or greater within 15 feet of the southern eastern lot line, so that would encompass not exactly where that neighbor was, because there's a little garage structure in between their property and the O'Brien House dormitory redevelopment. But those would be protected during the development, maintained and preserved thereafter, except for removal of diseased or naturally damaged trees which present a reasonable risk to life or property. So there has to be some accommodation for removing those.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. And just on that, I remember the presentation, they said that they'd be planting new trees in front of the spa. I don't know, council, but I think that we have a lack of trees in our plat right now. We've lost certainly a lot over the last couple of years. So in their presentation, they said they were going to do that. So I think that should probably be a term and condition of this as well, because Prince of Wales is one of the most picturesque streets, and a big part of that is the trees that you see more towards the point. Council, do you think that as per the presentation, that's what they said they're going to do? Do you think that should be included within it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we could just draft a modification to include that as well.
Yeah, as per the presentation. Okay, anything else? All right, so what I'm seeing based on this is, council, you are comfortable putting on the next regular meeting, second and third reading for this particular item, correct? Okay. Now's a chance to speak up if anyone would like to. Councilor Neal?
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. Yeah, I just would like to, I guess, stress again that clause about retaining the trees at the back of O'Brien House. I think it's important to keep that buffer between the properties, especially where they're basically mixed use. And I'm just questioning, I guess, from one of the renderings that was provided to us that does show this rather large parking lot in the back of it.
Yes, nice.
Which, I mean, it almost looks like you can see that existing structure, and it doesn't look like there's space for any of those existing mature trees there right now. But
I don't know, Mr. Henderson, if you could comment on that, or?
Yeah, so there is going to be a proposed parking lot there on the site plan that you're seeing, but no, with the existing trees, the ones that are going to be preserved would be within 15 feet. So when we measured that, that would take in the areas that they could preserve. So 15 feet on that site plan would be possible.
Councilor Gubichel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to let the trees slide, but if you look on Google Earth, you'll notice that Mr. Moore's property and Dan's property fronts on Parr Street, and then behind their place there's a barn, so the trees are behind that barn. So when we're really moving to densify our community, sometimes trees are going to be lost, and I think this might be a case where some of the trees might need to come down in order to move this project forward. So I don't think putting undue, I'm not saying cut all the trees, but I don't think we should not be moving forward with the project on account of a few trees. I notice there's lots of trees on the adjacent property that is on the other side of O'Brien House. There's all kinds of trees that were cut up there, and nobody's saying anything. So anyway, I don't think we should put too many conditions with regard to the trees. Thank you, Your Worship.
Maybe just for council's sake, since there's a couple of varying views on this, if they could provide a visual of the property with the trees, with the parking lot. I know there is kind of one, but to your point, I don't think it's to scale. So to have a to scale probably image of that, just because sometimes when you have multiple residential developments, you do make a buffer term and condition. And we just want to make sure that we heard from a neighbor that is. It seems like they said there was going to be, so let's make sure that is determined condition of it. And if it is, then they can't cut those trees. That simple. But maybe we could have our cake and to Councilor Grimachel's point, maybe we could have our cake and eat it too.
Thank
maybe,
you, I like that.
Yeah. Maybe have our candidate cake and eat it too. But there may be room there. Or Mr. Henderson says there is, so let's just get something that confirms that there is indeed before second and third, so we know going into second and third what we're facing, and then council at that point can make a decision on it one way or another, depending what side of that you're on. Right? Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is O'Brien House going to have the red roof as well?
O'Brien House, as the last rendering that I have received, is not. The proponent that actually said that if you look at that side of the street, not a single development or home on that side of the street has a red roof. So it's across the street. They're all gray or black. So it actually blends in more with that side of the street, but it was red for a long time, right? So over to you. But yeah, they said it that side of the street, there is no other red roof. But if you want to make that a determined condition, I'd recommend making that a determined condition now, so we'll be prepared for second and third reading. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Is that everything for you on that one, Mr. Spear? Okay, perfect. All right. We are at the NBCC housing project discussion. Mr. Spear, do you want to take it?
Thank you, Worship, and I apologize we didn't include the reports from last meeting. But if you remember, the architect had provided basically three options. The first option was kind of flat with minimal design. The second was set back with, I think it's called gable roofs. And then the third, beside the gable roof, had kind of like a brick overlay with that on every third option, or every third set of windows, in order just to give it more, loosely the word character, to make it, look better in the environment. And so one of the concerns of council was the affordability of it. The other concern that council had too was on whether to go 3 or 4 stories. Just to talk about cost, I know there's, besides the concern from the neighborhood of going a fourth is legitimate, but on a costing perspective, they thought it would be close to the less because you have a smaller pad that they're going to be supporting, and for a building of that height, the pads are fairly significant. But you're also going to have a lot smaller envelope in total building area, and that would lead to higher energy efficiencies. Basically, the more you can pop into a smaller building, the more energy efficient it is. So you'd have less exterior space by moving stuff upwards. So think of it this way, hypothetically, you could have a 42-story building that's only 1 unit each going up, and it's going to have a lot less outside area in order to battle the elements, is one way of thinking it. And the cost of the 4-story, he thought would be about 5% less than going. But again, it's very, very early in the process. This is just off his thoughts. So in regards to the different facades, if you will, of those options, so option 2 with the gabled roofs was about 7% more expensive to build. Again, using very thumbnail numbers, we're talking probably between $5 and $6 million to build this, roughly. So we're talking $350,000 to $420,000. And then if you go to the brick-looking facades on those gabled roofs, it's about 10% more than option 1. So that's $500,000 to $600,000 more. Now, that sounds significant, and I'm not saying it's not, but remembering this building's going to have a life of 30 or 40 years, when you depreciate it over a certain amount of time, it won't have that great amount of a rent. So it's really thinking about the character of the building for the inhabitants to be proud of versus the initial cost. Staff is good, I just don't want to make it simply about cost up front, that it's a cost spread out over 2 or 3 decades. And so you have to think into that type of thing. So being the accountant, I should have had this done before, but let's say it is $500,000, and I think they said, I want to say 42 units, divided by 42, $119, let's see, 42, 1, 2, 500,000. 5 million, no, 500,000, sorry. So we're talking about like an additional $12,000 per unit, but if you divide that over 25 years, that's $476 per year extra in cost divided by 12 months. So to get it's an extra $40 a month. Again, very thumbnail from an accountant, not a contractor, but just to give you an idea based on some of the numbers we're seeing right now. But on the flip side, some of it, there would be more cost efficiencies related to energy to some of it. So, but that's as best we could provide for information this early in the process.
So, Mr. Spear, after you're kind of saying that, I know I'll open up questions, but this discussion tonight, what are you looking for council to have consensus on the options?
Well, with the options, because it's really our next phase to get going, that the architects are now going to do a more detailed design to be able to complete that, and they'll do a very, again, after that, they'll be able to complete what's called a level D or E estimate of what they think the building cost is going to be, which will allow us to advance this onto funding partners and going beyond this first phase of figuring out the setup cost of all these.
Perfect. Council, over to you. Just preliminary thoughts to that is, if I'm going to the New Brunswick Community College, I'd rather save the $40 a month, just because the reality is it's my unit. I'm going there to get an affordable place versus what it looks like. But in the same sense, we have a very beautiful and historic town too, so you got to weigh that out as well from the external value of it to consider. And I will say that if we're going from 3 to 4 floors based on energy efficiency, based on cost savings, when a developer comes in and asks the same thing, all those reasons apply to them too. So if you're going to do it for yourself, why wouldn't you do it for them as well, is the question, right? So that's just something to consider on that. It'll be more space saved on their lot just as well, right, for their development. So I'm just always a little aware of you set policies, terms and conditions, and then we don't follow them. It's a little bit of a concern, but I will say that if there was ever a spot where it could go in the community and not be as as visual, it would certainly be there. And the projections we saw from the street is you still wouldn't see the fourth store from that side of the development. I don't know, Argonne Court would probably see it, right? So over to you, Council. That's just preliminary thoughts on what we just heard. Council, over to you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the previous meeting, we discussed the 3 options, and I voted for the first option because it was the cheapest, and being affordable is certainly top of the list for that demographic. I did go back and look at the presentation that was made at the Blue Moon Hotel, Tressa's building, and really the first option is not unsimilar to the Tressa's building. There's very little difference between the two. So I know that a lot of people weren't happy and called it institutional in looks and whatnot, but really I didn't find it displeasing at all. I thought it was quite attractive, and it's not unsimilar to another building that's being built right now as we speak. So, for that fact, I would support the 4th floor if we could save 5% of the build cost to keep the cost down, and go with the first option purely for fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Any other member of council? Councillor Heaton.
I'll just throw this out there. Option 2, 3 stories.
I feel like I'm having a bit of a Groundhog Day here, trying to get consensus coming up here. Option 2, 3 stories. What we'll do is we'll go around the horn to everybody, get some thoughts, and then I'll try to, based on your comments, try to get some consensus. Councillor Hurdle.
I agree with Councillor Heenan. I think option 2, 3 stories. I just wonder if there'd be an opportunity for us to consider solar for a building of this nature, the cost of which have come down considerably, and I think it could be add a considerable amount of efficiency to the building.
So the building is being designed as net zero ready, I think is the proper term. They said the solar does add significantly to the cost, but their thoughts are that's now, that their anticipation is in a decade that probably the government of Canada will be given solar to people, similar to the, well, not giving EV cars, but you know what I mean, giving tremendous discounts more than that's there available. So initially, they don't recommend it, but we've taken it to a design level where it won't be very hard to convert it to that.
Thank you.
Any other member of council? Councilor Good-Michelle.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
I would submit option 3, 4 stories. I think that the community college is a key economic engine in our community, like a piston. If we had a 6 or 8 cylinder car, it'd be a key driver. So it's not the same as if a developer comes and asks us to put on a 4th floor. We're actually supporting our whole community by having more people being able to live there, and also having a place that looks quite a bit nicer for an extra 40 or 50 bucks a month. A place that they can be proud to stay. And if things in the future don't work out with the college, it could be other sorts of housing. So doing it right the first time, and having it 4 floors would be my vote. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor Good-Michelle. Councilor Harlan.
So I believe that this is that this is an opportunity for us to look at 4 stories without it having an impact. Each request we have to look at it on its own merits. I think the energy efficiency is enough of a driver for me in order to recommend the 4th story, but also it lessens the footprint. And my understanding from the presentation was then we could look at potentially a second building. And I think we have to be planning, we have to include planning or thinking for down the road. My preference is certainly the 3rd. Aesthetically, I think it's more pleasing. I would go with option 2. I would prefer not option 1, but option 2 or 3 and 4 stories.
Thank you. Councilor Blanchard.
Yeah, I'll throw mine in. I'll go option 2, 4 stories. Again, for a lot of the same reasons that had already been stated, especially with regards to Councillor Harlan's comments about planning for the future. A smaller footprint now does provide us with a bit more flexibility later on if we chose to move forward with another development. So go up a little bit higher where we can, and I think, as was mentioned, this is an area where I think we can do it without having that much of an impact. It can make sense in this area to go 4 stories and reduce the initial footprint where we could maybe give us some flexibility later on.
Thank you, Councilor Blanchard. Any other Councilor? Or then we'll go Councilor Neal, then Councilor Hurdle.
I must give my opinion. It's about the same as Councilor Blanchard's. Option 2, 4 stories. I think it's always cheaper to build up than out. There is higher cost of putting the foundation in, but there's cost savings going up, and it is more energy efficient. So it only makes sense. Plus, we have a piece of land that we can develop in the future if we have to, or need to, or want to, whatever the word is.
Thank you, Councilor. Well, Councilor Neal.
Yeah, thank you. A couple points, I guess. First, just from the presentations, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no additional units with the 4th floor. It's the same number of apartments whether we go 3 or 4?
Correct.
Correct. And also from the presentation, I remember the option for the second building was there regardless. I think the space is there.
Yes.
A question, I don't know if maybe the planners can help with this, but the costs of building up, I'm thinking, I don't know if there's any changes to building codes with regards to the safety of the building. I'm thinking like standpipes for fire suppression in the hallways. Again, the cost going up is going to add to the fireproofing between levels. I just was wondering if you had any insights onto that.
If I may, Your Worship?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think the real costs really come in after the 4th story. So that's when you go to 5, then you're starting to talk about more than just wood frame or the typical wood frame. So I think in this sort of level, what I understood from the sort of the preliminary presentation from the development company was that they would be putting an elevator in regardless of 3 or 4 stories. So that would be one major cost, which I think you're gonna see no matter which option you pick.
Yeah.
So in terms of the cost difference in the breakdown, I mean, with architect, I think would be better able to speak to the difference. And I think what I heard was certainly that 4 stories was going to be a little bit more cost efficient on the whole. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that they did mention that there was energy savings for it, but I'm just wondering about the initial costs, if it's that much more expensive to go up instead of out. And then again, I think this came up at our last meeting as well, the concerns from the neighboring. I just personally feel like we're going to have quite a bit of pushback going with 4 stories where we have denied it before. And I do agree with your comment earlier that I feel like we're setting a bit of a precedent there for future development. I appreciate that this is sort of unique, but I think we're going to have a bit of a battle on our hands.
Good news for me is I don't get to vote. There's 9 of you. We'll make sure everyone goes around first. Yep.
Sorry, Worship, but just Councillor Neal didn't provide an opinion. If he doesn't want to provide one, that's okay. I'm just recording.
He won the vote.
I would go 2 and 3.
Okay. All right. Councillor Hurley, you're next.
Thanks. I already had my chance to speak, but I might be.
I lost track.
I know you did. I'm just jumping.
That is
in.
right. Whoa. Okay. Whoa. No, go ahead.
I was willing to amend it, but I just had a question. Just to get Councillor Neal's point for the planners regarding massing and height standards, and whether if we were to go for 4 floors, if we not then automatically setting a massing and height standard for future development. I know that we're sort of safe where that's going to be located, but if anyone were to develop around Argyle Court, would that create a new standard for us?
It's a fair question when you look at the. Go ahead, though.
Yeah, so this wouldn't create a new standard for Argyle Court because Argyle Court would be outside of the secondary municipal plan in this case. Also, with the amendment that council's considering that would relate to the Algonquin developments, which are discussed tonight, that also deals with sort of site-specific landmark-type buildings that are at least 15 meters away from another building on another lot. So you could look at this sort of as an individual sort of development. And it is true that if you're going to set a zoning, a new zone for a development, you can do sort of an integrated development zone or custom site-specific zone, a zone for a site. So you don't have to change a zone for the entirety of the community, where a 4-story might not be appropriate, such as was discussed in past applications for Water Street, where that was rejected.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I think, like Councillor Neal, when we're setting a precedence of 4 stories, irregardless that is in an area where probably isn't obstructing the view of anything except for the trees and maybe those birds that are killing the power. But other than that, I prefer to have a 3-story rather than the 4-story. But option 2 or option 3, I kind of like 3 because it's got the gables, and that's very aesthetically pleasing for me and for our town. So, but I would go with 3 stories because I think we've turned down a lot of buildings that were 4 and 5 stories. So we will be setting a precedence if we go for anything higher. Thank you.
Perfect, Deputy Mayor. Anyone have anything new to add? Okay, new to add. Go ahead. Councillor Heenan went first. I'll go Councillor Neal.
I just want to make it perfectly clear that I am not opposed to the 4th floor. Absolutely not. But if you want to get this going, you got to do a 3-floor. I'm just telling you. You will have so much backlash. It will never fly. And we can call it what you want, but it's still going to set a precedent, and it's going to be hard for this council to get it passed. So if you really want to get this to move, you're going to have to do a 3-floor. I would definitely support 2 and 4, but I know I'm not going to because it's just not going to fly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neal.
Yeah, just back to that last point from the planner there, Mr. Henderson. I appreciate that this wouldn't change much for Argyle Court with regards to precedence for a 4-story building, but I'm just looking at the site plan again, and I'm thinking in the future here, if the daycare moves into this new building or into the new Passamaquoddy Lodge, and that location of the current daycare becomes available, which is part of this PID, would that be a possibility to all of a sudden throw up a 4-story building right there, which is surrounded by residential properties?
Well means.
All right. Yeah. So basically, what you could do in this case is, if you were looking at this as a 4-story and you were looking at outside of your current zones, you could do the integrated development zone for that site, and you could also set it that it's just applying to that building. And that's kind of the approach we probably would recommend. Or if you were to create a zone for it that does 4, then you can actually zone part of a PID. You don't have to do the whole PID just because it's one lot.
Thank you. We are talking group tonight, Councilor Gouverchel.
Last one for me, I guess it'd be a question for staff. I'm just wondering, what other, besides the Water Street one from Mr. Rocca, what properties have asked for a 4th floor?
There's,
I may need help, but there's a subdivision proposal, when we put an RFP out, there was a fourth floor development, back on that property that was adjacent to Anchor's Landing. That is, maybe the planners can help me remember the other
Sorry to
one.
put you on the spot there.
I don't think I can speak to it, but I do know of a developer that is looking to propose a 4th-story apartment building in the community.
So I guess just 2 questions for the planner then. The first one would be, if we did approve this 4th floor, it doesn't set a precedent because it's basically a spot zoning. Am I right?
Yeah, through your worship. No, it doesn't set a precedent. So I think it's more of like a feeling that if you were to rezone something and allow a 4-story, that there's like an obligation to the next person that comes along that you're gonna. But that's not a fact in reality. You can, when you're looking at a rezoning, you have to look at the site in specific and the context. You look at what the public feedback is in the municipal plan policy as it applies to that situation, and you can use your judgment case by case, and that's really what a rezoning process is about. Is you have your bylaw, but then you're looking at development that's outside of the bylaw, and that's totally within the realm of what you're supposed to be doing as council. Look at each and every site as its own thing.
Thank you.
This will be your just because I like you.
That's very much appreciated, Your Worship. This is a quick thing. So I just remember as a kid walking down Parr Street going to school, you'd look up Parr Street from the end of it and you could see the community college all the way down Parr. So if we are going for 4 stories, it will be visible and it will dominate your viewpoint looking up Parr Street because you'll be able to see it. I could be mistaken on this, but I'm thinking you would be able to definitely see the 4th floor, in which case it should be aesthetically pleasing because it'll change the nature of the viewpoint down Parr Street, which is a major road. So I would change it to my option to 3 because it has the gables on it, because it's going to need to look nice. We don't want an industrial building dominating the viewpoint.
Perfect. Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I'm not going to cut anyone off.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Alex, they're saying that if it's 3 or 4 stories, it's still the same number of units. So what's the sense of having 4 stories that has the same number of units? Does that mean
energy efficiency
just hold
and
on.
cost? Yeah.
Does it mean that the apartments are going to be bigger?
I can, I guess, respond to this, Your Worship. So no, I don't believe that was the intent. It's just simply that they're shrinking the footprint of the building, and then some of the building facade can be shrunk with that. But it's my understanding, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the same number of units, and they don't change fundamentally the size of the units.
That's correct. I mean, thinking it in more simplistic terms, you're taking the bigger footprint and putting it on top with the same side, same number of units. Not quite that simple, but it's the same number of units, the same number of like 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. So it really hasn't changed the capacity of the building. It's just changed the overall, or the footprint and the height. Same number of units, same size each unit.
And I know it's more energy efficient.
Your Worship, this isn't, we're not reaching a point of no return here either. Just like to emphasize that for everybody. Like if people think this decision's finalized, we still have to go through our own rezoning process and things. And so this is just to start the process for funding and things. And we're still a ways down. So for anyone that's listening that might be concerned that the decision has been made, this is, I guess, to say is council's, I'll use the word loosely, preference, or at least is what they want to explore as an option. But if they go through the public consultation process, and as Councillor Heenan suggested, that it may not be as popular as we hoped, then certainly we can change our plan and go back to a 3-story building. We're not committing long-term. We're just going through the initial funding phases to have a look at this.
Councillor Harlan.
Thank you. Chris, just in terms of the timing of this, so if we came up to some consensus or majority around a 4th story, and then we went to public consultation, and there was significant concern.
Resistance, we'll say.
Resistance, concern about the 4th story. Would that add a significant lag in time for us to move this forward?
I'm speaking for an architect, which I probably shouldn't be doing, to be honest, but there's going to come a point where right now we're looking at it, getting all the data together to find out funding.
Right.
We got to figure out the funding model. I mean, council doesn't have the capacity to use taxpayers' money to build this thing. That's a given. And so I think once we start to that second phase, we'll start going through the rezoning process. Again, these are just conceptual drawings. And again, we can go back to the architect and say, this isn't flying. Well, he's going to have a lot of the work done on kind of the inside and stuff. And so it'll just be figuring out what the 4 versus a 3-story looks like. So we can check. We have a meeting coming up, I think, in 2 weeks with them, and I'll pass the information from tonight along to them. But I will ask at the meeting that, going through the rezoning, if this doesn't fly, what does that mean?
Right.
But again, they probably are used to that. Again, this is just very early on, high-level conceptual drawings in order to start to get some numbers down in order to approach funding partners. We still have to look at, the land there and the feasibility, get it transferred in their names and all that stuff. So tonight is a big step just to be able to help us start narrowing it down to council's preference, but there's still a whole lot of availability for consultation that the community can get back to us, and then we can change along the way too.
Great. Can I just add one
Yep.
point? Thank you for that, Mr. Spear. And I guess for me, Mr. Henderson's reinforcing the point around the fact that we as a council have to make individual decisions on every application that comes before us, or every request that comes before us. And so while I know precedent, we have to consider precedent, it doesn't have to drive, or I don't think it should drive the decisions that we make on every request. Every request has to be looked at, from my perspective, on the merit of the request, and a whole lot of factors that go into this. And as we've just outlined, for me, the fact that this is a very unique location that potentially allows us a 4th story because it's there's some cost saving, energy cost saving to it, it's not the same as putting a 4-story building in our historic downtown. So for me, thank you, Mr. Henderson, for reminding me that we have to look at each request on its own merit.
Thank you. Any other member of council, anything new? New? Not an opinion, just something new for debate, like to consideration. Councillor Heenan.
I do feel that what Councillor Harland has said is absolutely true. However, the town of St. Andrews is used to a certain way of operating. And that's the way it's going to operate. And they have an expectation of how council should look after their assets and how council should look after their buildings and how council should see our vision. If they don't, people do see visions, but they only see it in their own eyes. So we as a council can say all we want, like the sign. We can override our bylaw with the sign. We can see that we can do this, but we as a council have the right to the public to follow the basic bylaws that exist within the town of St. Andrews. And if we're going to change everything that comes to council, then the town of St. Andrews will not be happy. So I'm just saying, if we're going to look at everything and we're going to change it and we're going to make a new plan, we're going to make a new zone, we're going to do, then there's not much use of having council. Because the people of St. Andrews deserve and expect a certain level from this council. And that is to look out for their assets and their well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Oh, sorry, sir, someone else. No, I think everyone kind of knows where everyone's position is at this point. So, council, unless there's, again, something new. Okay, I will try to get some consensus out of here. I will start with the third or the fourth floor, and then we can talk about design, because there's 3 options there. But the third or fourth floor is something, it's your personal preference. We've talked about it. As far as the, do you have?
I wrote down as each person expressed it, so right now, it's a 4th story with the second option, but if you want to go a show of hands, that's fine.
I'd like to go for a show of hands, because I know there was some people that changed kind of a little bit of views, and I'd just like to, just for the record, have it there. So, council, just a show of hands, how many would prefer 4 stories? There it is, that's 5. And 3 stories? It's 3, and did we have one person not vote? Stayed, okay, so about you can abstain from a consensus one anyway. So it's 4 stories. It is now. How many? What did you say the number 1 option was? Number 2. A show of hands for number 2. I'm only seeing 3. Oh, I'm seeing 4. Hold those up a little higher there. 4. Okay. How many prefer option number 3? Seeing 4. How many prefer option number 1? Okay, Councillor Bennett, option number 1 has been eliminated. I'll ask you to re-vote. Would you prefer option number 2 or option number 3?
Because of economics, I have 2 options, and option 2 would be the most preferred.
Option 2 by 5 to 4. The lowest one was eliminated. He can. That's a good one. All right, council. Those were 2 close votes, though. So I think the architect will could potentially be revisited at some point for one or the other. Yeah, who knows? Thank you. It's good to have consensus on that with very little debate. All right, we are moving to page 94 in our packages. Give me a moment here. Sorry, I was looking at designs throughout that. Councillor Harlan.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. So this is reference number PCD 240702, and the subject is Amendment Z22-10 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01, PIDs 15025083, 01326214, and 01325406, 236 Mowat Drive, Harbortown Builders. Call for a public hearing of objections and views of the Planning Advisory Committee. The Town of St. Andrews has received a rezoning request for PIDs 15025083, 01326214, and 01325406 for 236 Mowat Drive from Harbortown Builders. They are looking to create a small subdivision of 1-story homes. Please see the attached planning report from Xander Gopin, Senior Planner, for more details. Note that Harbortown Builders presented to council earlier this year on this subdivision concept, but has since made changes. So the bylaw process is as follows. Public presentation July 2nd, 2024. Views of the Planning Advisory Committee. Public hearing of objections. First reading, second reading, third and final reading. Note that there would need to be a subdivision agreement in place before third and final reading. Additionally, Harbortown Builders may be seeking support from the town for a public road and infrastructure. Staff will provide more details at a later date. And the action is as follows. that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews obtains views of the Planning Advisory Committee to Amendment Z22-10 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PIDs 15025083, 01326214, and 01325406 for 236 Mowat Drive for Harbortown Builders as per the Community Planning Act, Section 110. And I so move.
Seconder for that one. I think Councillor Bennett won that one. Discussion on this one? Okay, all in favor of sending this to the PAC, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everybody. That has been carried. And the next one?
And the second motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews sets the date of Tuesday, August the 6th, 2024, at 6:30 p.m. for a public hearing of objections to Amendment Z22-10 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PIDs 15025083, 01326214, and 01325406 for 236 Mowat Drive for Harbortown Builders as per Community Planning Act, Section 111, and I so move.
Thank you. Seconder once again. Councillor Keenan won that one. Discussion on this one? Okay, all in favor of setting that date for hearing of objections, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's everybody that's carried, and I think we did discuss earlier, we'll be setting up polling to notify them of the hearing of objections, Mr. Spear.
If you wish, your worship,
Quick
council.
quick show of hands if you'd like to do a polling for this, so the neighbors are, okay, yeah, that's pretty much
Okay, so
everyone.
it was 100 meters sufficient, which is typical, I believe?
Yeah, I'd say keep it standard to what we do for other ones. Is that what we did for Compass Housing, 100 meters? No, 100 meters.
I think, yeah,
Xander actually on that one because that was his file.
Yeah, because that's
100 meters would be typical for a PAC file in the downtown.
perfect. Let's stick with that then, unless anyone feels different. Nope. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We are jumping to 116. And this is Councillor Heaton.
Your Worship and Council, it's PCD 240703. Encroachment agreement for 325 Brandy Cove Road, PID 151645510, John Irving. It was brought to the Town of St. Andrews' attention that the owners of 325 Brandy Cove Road, Mr. John Irving, installed a new deer protection fence around their property. With the installation, it was placed in the right-of-way of the town approximately 1 meter outside their property lines. Please see the attached photos for more details. Town staff have reviewed the fencing and have proposed an encroachment agreement with terms and conditions. Please see the attached encroachment agreement for more details. Mr. Irving has agreed to the encroachment agreement as outlined. As this is a permanent extension of a fence into town right-of-way, council would need to approve the agreement before it can be completed. And the action is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews enter into an encroachment agreement for PID 151645510, 325 Brandy Cove Road, Mr. and Mrs. John Irving. I so move.
Thank you. Seconder for that one. Councillor Neal, discussion? Mr. Spear?
Sorry, Worship. I just want to be a little bit of clarity. So on part, or within the agreement, it says about it being, it just said as a fence, which you see, which is a clear fence. I'm just wondering, without being more specific, the proponent, I'm not saying they're doing this, by the way, but let's say 10 years down the road, somebody could decide to put up a wooden fence on the outside of the hedges. And I just want to see if you're okay with that, or if you like the transparency of this one, and we should be a little more specific in the encroachment agreement and what you find acceptable along there.
Council, over to you on that one. Councillor Kubishella, we'll go Councillor Heaton.
Thank you, Your Worship. It seems like this fence is so close to the road, like when they're plowing and things, wouldn't the snow, if it was a wooden fence, wouldn't the snow go up against the fence and
Destroy.
yeah. It's too bad there's not more room. We could have had a sidewalk along there, but since there's not enough room and the fence already exists, then I guess we need this encroachment agreement. But I wouldn't be in favor of being a wooden fence that close to the road for just the logistics of it and also the look of it. Thank you.
Councillor Heaton?
Yes, Your Worship and Council, I would say the see-through fence that exists now is what should be the one that's there. And the other issue is I wouldn't want to see, because the hedge is going to grow, so I wouldn't want to see them move the fence further out. Like, we have seen that happen downtown.
That'd be part of the agreement, though.
Yes, it would have to stay as the clear fence, because to go with snow removal, as Councillor Gumashal says, and aesthetics, this would be the way to go. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor, just a quick show of hands of the clear fence. Yeah, okay. Perfect. Okay, so anything else, Mr. Spear? You're good? Okay, anyway, Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Worship. Just for clarity, if the property were to sell, what happens to the encroachment agreement?
The encroachment agreement is attached to the property, not to the owner.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, call the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. Okay, we are heading to Deputy Mayor Ackergy, and I will be declaring a conflict of interest on the next item. So if you don't mind just leading the conversation, Mr. Spear, on page 123.
Could I have a volunteer take my portfolio for the time being? Councillor Heenan, thank you, because the mayor is leaving the building. Oh, leaving the council chambers. Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Please begin.
Thank you,
Page
Worship.
125 of
Page 125 of the package. 123. Oh. What?
That's you, Mr. Spear. Would you like to speak on that?
Sure. So, Council, we brought the updated solid waste bylaw to you, I want to say last meeting, maybe 2 meetings ago. And there was a couple of questions that came up from Council and staff. One was about how to word it properly for the types of collection or containers that could be used on roadside out in the local service districts. Sorry, out in the communities of Bayshide and Shamcook. And that the rules had changed from what the town used to allow to their local government's reform in 2023. That's been taken care of. There's not going to be any changes that way, just we have to update our bylaw accordingly, which we caught at the last minute. But the question that came up from council was about the dealing of apartments and what is the best way to go with this. So with the help of Mr. Gopin from the RSC, when he was doing housing study, he's provided this list of all the apartments within the old St. Andrews. He's saying that he's not aware of any multiple, or at least any registered multiple residential buildings in Bayside and Shamcook that he could find. So he looked, but couldn't find anything that could be listed as such. And so for the public's sake, I can read them out. So there's about 45 properties that have 4 units and under. There's 5 properties that have 5 to 9 units, and 10, and there's 3 properties and 5 proposed properties that have 10 or more units in it, for a total of 53 properties that are going to be affected one way or 45 are already under our current bylaw and are being collected by the collectors. So it's really the 8 above the 4 units and under that we have to have a discussion about, or at least you have to provide guidance to staff. As I've said previously, most jurisdictions stick with the 4 and under, but that's, I can't explain it. That's just the number someone picked at Confederation, and everyone said, sure, that works, and goes with it. There is an expectation that there's a difference between an investment property, which apartments typically are, not all, I get that, apartments typically are, versus home residential. And so, but within today's inflation and the housing skyrocketing, certainly any savings landowners can have, the expectation is that they'll pass it off to their tenants, or the hope is anyway. And so we've had a lot of people reach out, including one of the landowners of a larger complex, saying how the savings are fairly significant and they'd like to be considered to fall within. I did find one community in Nova Scotia, and again, I didn't poll every community, all of Canada, but I did call Kentville and talk to them, and they're the only one I saw, but they do pick up any size of apartment building, that it's part of the regular collection. That is unusual, but progressive, if you will. And so this is going to have an effect not only on the bylaw now, but we are going to tender for garbage sooner rather than later, and we have to know how to structure it. So without going to the tender, I can't really say how much it's going to cost or how much it's going to save overall. It looks like, based on the buildings we see now, that we'll pay an extra $2,000 a month for the big buildings. So that's up to $24,000 a year you'll be paying for units of 10 or more, based on what we paid as part of an economic development agreement on one of the existing buildings. But that's just based on current numbers and not future. So it's a combination of cost savings, but also a philosophical, political discussion on if you think that if they're paying for garbage within their property taxes anyway, then maybe it should be collected. The same could be said about business, for sure, but again, that's a little bit of a different thing in my mind when you have a for-profit business versus a residential unit. And so staff is completely okay with whatever you come with. Certainly, if there's something that logistically is going to be tough to enforce or to write into a bylaw, we'll advise you of that. But it's really back in your hands as to what your preference is long-term on this certain service, that if you want it to be paid in full or collected in full as best we can for all residences or not.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Council, what is your preference? Councillor Bennett, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess I've made my opinion very clear. I'm not against us not picking up garbage in the larger units. If that's a logistic problem for our service provider, I'm absolutely on board with us not picking up garbage for those larger buildings. I asked a CAO for how much in the town, seeing the only buildings that are part of this are in the town, and you came back and said that in their taxes they're paying 7.5% towards garbage pickup. And I'm guessing most of those larger buildings have a pretty hefty tax bill. Yes. So, and I don't know what 7.5% of one of the larger buildings would equate to, but looking at another $24,000 on top of the 7.5% of their taxes they're already paying, and the fact that it is clear that they are paying a different tax rate. There's already a different tax rate for those buildings, so I don't see why it would be hard for us to not charge the 7.5% for the buildings that we're not going to pick up the garbage. That way they're only going to pay for their own garbage and they're not subsidizing the other parts of town for it. And I'd like to make a motion that we exclude those buildings from the 7.5% of the garbage tax that they would pay, be remitted back to them or not be charged to them, and they just take care of their own garbage at their own will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Mr. Spear?
Councillor Bennett, I appreciate your enthusiasm on this. That's probably almost impossible to do because you'd have to make a different tax zone for each physical property. And the tax zones are usually geographic locations like streets or certain areas. But as buildings kind of change, I don't think the province would like that very much. The other problem we're going to have is the tax zonings have to be done in the first quarter of the year, so this would delay it for another year. So it wouldn't kick into effect into 2026. And just so you're aware, it's
Yeah, no,
wherever you
and
go.
thank you, CAO, for
Yeah.
pointing that out. However, I don't believe that those property owners would be too overly concerned about the extra work and effort to make this happen. I don't expect it will be easy to do, but I do think it's 100% right. Just like the people in Kentville pick up their garbage as part, and how progressive that thought is, that they get the services that they pay for. And I think that if we're not going to provide a service, we're excluding them from a service, we should exclude them from the cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Any other councillor? Councillor Harlan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can I just clarify, Chris? In Kentville, is that what happens? They're excluded from those?
No, they're part of the regular collection. So they're included in the regular collection regardless of their size. If they're if their primary purpose is residences, then they're included. So all
Right.
residents, whether it's apartments, houses.
Irregardless of how many units?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, Councillor Blanchard?
And this is a question to staff. Do we have a sense then, for all these units, I guess we're looking at 8 units currently with the potential for another 5 units, which would be over and above essentially over and above five or more units, I guess. How many of those do we currently pick up garbage for? Do we know, to staff?
I'd say everything under 5 to 9 units. I think they're probably sneaking it out in smaller bunches.
Right. So
to be
10 or
honest,
more,
we don't
so-
audit our garbage every Thursdays or Tuesdays.
Sure. So it's just the 10 or more, then likely we would be incurring the costs for. So 3, potentially another 5, which are, I think, listed as approved developments. So potentially 8. So, I mean, it's a difficult question, but do we have a sense then, if we were to incur the costs, those additional costs, what would that be for the town? And I'm asking this because, again, at 10 or more, you talked earlier about businesses, and we don't pick up for businesses because they are for-profit. 10 or more units, these developments are for-profit. These are, in my mind, I sort of look at it in the same light as a business, whereas this is a for-profit operation. I recognize it's a little bit different, but still, and I guess the question that I have is should the citizens of St. Andrews subsidize a for-profit business? So do we have a sense then, if we were to have these 3 plus an additional 5, do we have a sense of what that additional cost would be for the town of St. Andrews?
Well, again, it was roughly, and again, futures, but we're paying about $250 a month for an existing one.
Okay.
So if you pick up additional, I guess we have 1 plus additional 7. So that's where it came up about the $2,000 a month that we'd have in total, roughly. It'd probably be less, but that's just estimate. The other, and just, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but one of the points of the discussion was that some of the housing, and not just recent projects, but there's some housing that's already in the plat that is really serving a need, that's low income and stuff, and that's really what drove this discussion in the first place, not necessarily. So that's kind of what's muddied the water, if you will, is about, for council, is trying to determine how to create an incentive for low income participants. But even, I'm not saying every penny doesn't count, but if I'm saying it's even, let's just use a round number of $30,000, based on a roughly $600 million tax assessment, we're roughly talking, a half a cent, just in additional taxes, or other things, other services we have to cut back, just to put it in perspective, if so councils can understand kind of what it does for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Mr. Councillor Blanchard, is that okay?
Thank you.
Any other councillor? Any suggestions, council?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, I guess that is, at the end of the day, it's really, there's not a motion for tonight, for sure, but we
Okay.
need direction how to shape our bylaw. So maybe, if I could borrow from Mayor Henderson's, you just do a vote on how many think we should support 10 and over units, how many think we should support 5 and more units, and then maybe, if that's okay with the rest of council, but it would maybe allow us to try to get this narrowed down.
Thank you. Councillor Heenan, you have something to say?
Yes, thank
And
you,
then-
Worship. I would be all right with the 5 units, because that would knock out 5. Like, if we moved it up to 5 units, it would knock out 5. And as Councillor Blanchard has said, the 10 unit and more is for profit, most likely. So I'm okay with collecting for 5 units, but 10, you're going above and beyond. I just think, that's just my opinion, but that's where I'm sit with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Okay, Council, the proposal is that 5 units and under, you accept, or you accept the 10 units. So I'm going to ask for a raise of hands for 5 units and under.
Just a point of order there. It's
all right.
4 units and under, and 5 to 9 units, and 10 units and more. Is that correct? Those are the 3 options. Yeah.
So 5 and under?
Broke that down.
Or 4 and under?
It's under 5, 5
Okay,
to
under
9,
5.
and 10 and more.
Okay, Council, how many would support the under 5? Show of hands, please.
Support collecting it?
Collecting it, yeah.
We already do.
We already do it, but,
Yeah.
but to collect it, further on down the road. Okay. What about, okay, Councillor Neal, you have something? Nope. Okay.
Sorry, Your Worship, just a wee little bit of clarity, that everyone can just vote on each one, meaning that, we're just seeing how many support the lowest. If you all support it, great, then we go to the next level, then we go to the final level. So you don't have to just pick one, or you just stop voting as we keep escalating, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so sorry, Councillor Neal.
Yeah, just so I can clarify, this is my own head here, I'm getting a little confused. So are we not basically voting on 4 and under, or the other 2? Like, the other 2 are essentially combined. If you're gonna do it for 5 to 9, are you not doing it for 10 as well?
It's whatever you want to do. That's why I'm asking for clarity,
I'm not sure why
Council.
Why would?
we pick up for 4 and under and 10 or more, and just pick on 5 to 9.
Okay.
Why? Yeah, I see what you're saying.
To me, there's 2 options there. There's 4 or under,
4
or
under.
it's
Or
5
the
and
other
up.
one, yeah, 5 and up. So, Councillor Bennett has something.
Thank you. Can I just ask for clarification? My understanding when this all started was that the service provider was having a hard time picking up garbage from the larger units. Is that not the case, or, because like if it's
No,
the service provider that's having
It's a
a hard
question of
time-
who's paying for it. It's a question of who's paying
But
for
they're already
it.
paying for it in their taxes.
Well, that's a philosophical discussion. I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying, though, it's the practice. Well, I know, but the practice for most communities is not to pick those up, and they're still paying it in their taxes too. So you've got a good point. I'm just saying that's not been the practice across most of the jurisdictions in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia.
Okay, Council, so it's 4 and under, or it's 5 and up. So, no, not 5 and
Still
up?
do 5 to 9.
Sorry?
Yep, 5 to 9 and 10 and up.
5 to 9 and 10 and up.
Yep.
So under 4?
I support it.
Yes.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just picking it up. So there's 6 for under 4. 5 to 9? 1, 2,
Supporting.
Picking up, supporting.
Supporting, picking, yeah.
5 to 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 10
So picking up garbage
Yes.
for 10.
for 10
And up.
units and up.
Just 1. Does that clarify it? Mr. Spear?
Yeah, I'm good. So from what I understand, we'll put it in the bylaw, and Councillor Bennett, you still have the opportunity to debate it when we put it forward in the bylaw in a next meeting in August.
Right.
But right now, the instruction is to write the bylaw that only buildings with 9 units and under will have collection included in the residential pickup.
Yes. Okay. Is that clear, Council? Okay. Thank you very much. Would you go and get the mayor, please? Thank you. So, Finance and Administration, FA 240720, because you're back, I can read my own.
Keep going, yeah.
Clerical process repeal bylaw number 16-01, respecting remuneration of town council. So the background is this. Staff have been working through all town bylaws on file to ensure the records and management system is up to date. Through the review, one bylaw was found to have not been repealed, bylaw number 16-01, respecting remuneration of the town council. New versions of this bylaw have been brought forward, approved, and repealed. To ensure proper record-keeping processes are followed, council needs to formally repeal bylaw number 16-01. So the motion is this, that the council of the town of St. Andrews repeal bylaw number 16-01, respecting remuneration of town council. And I so move this, your worship.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Heaton, discussion on this one. It is just repealing an old bylaw.
Yeah.
Okay.
Must be a good time to get raised. It's a health plan, therapy,
I better take this to a vote, eh? All in favor of repealing this bylaw, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everyone. It's been repealed. Next one is
Councillor Weir.
yeah. It's this point. It's the discussion on the Market Wharf. Mr. Spear, I know there's a short note in the package, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Worship, and I was hoping to have a meeting with CBCL earlier today, but they are still doing some study. So, Council, CBCL is going through the processes on the wharf and permitting with DFO, and DFO has flagged the infill option of the project, and I'd say have some questions and concerns about it, and they have deemed that it maybe caused the destruction of fish habitat, and they aren't denying the use of it, but they're looking for alternative locations for it, that we might be able to do a project through someone else that would, in an alternate location within the area that would kind of offset it. I guess the best I can think of is like offsetting credits with greenhouse gases and stuff, that they do a trade-off, that in order to allow us to continue with this project, they would have us do some remediation work down the road. At this point, that's all we know, that they've given us some indication to partnership with the Passamaquoddy Recognition Group, who kind of specialize in this stuff. And we just found out about this, or were able to get a meeting with them late last week, and they weren't able to get back to me. So this is to be followed up. We're going to have to see. There could be extra costs. We don't know if they're significant or not to determine if this is the way to go. The alternative is to move the fill back, but part of the reason we went with the fill was because council was concerned about that, that it kind of had that I shape going at one point, or if you looked at one side, it caused like a boomerang effect. And then in the end of the day, the reason we ended up going with the infill too was it was significantly more cost effective, but it also could be done over winter. And so I would say this is a setback, but certainly not enough to take it off the table yet, that there's questions to be discussed. And I'm going to try to get in with them this week and pass information along to you. We may have a special virtual meeting or something in July to discuss it. But that's all the information I have right now. All things being equal, they said if we have a good plan, it only takes 3 or 4 months to review, and we could still get to construction at our planned date. But the big question is, what is the cost of the remediation going to be? And that is complete and utter unknown at this point. There will be additional consultation fees for sure, and then depending on the cost of the remediation itself, that is yet to be determined.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. It's really unfortunate because this was a question from council quite some time ago. This late in the project and other decisions that we're making that have impacts on businesses, it's really, really tough pill to swallow. So I will go to, for sure, Councillor Ware. I almost feel like we need to hear from CBCL on what that process looks like before we get into a long discussion on it, because right now we don't really know. All I'm going to say is I don't think we start debating other options right now, Council. I think it's too preliminary until we know what this really means. It could be as much as perhaps putting in a fish ladder out at the dam at the lake. I don't know, for salmon. Who knows, right? It could be something as far as a consultant recommends these 3 actions by the town of St. Andrews to help fish. I don't know what it means, but to pull the plug on a project that we've communicated to the public right now, it just seems too preliminary to even really discuss at this point. Councillor Ware.
Well, I'm disappointed with it. I thought we should opt in April, I think, with respect to the EIA and with respect to remedial.
Is the microphone on?
With respect to doing remedial work for the area being filled in, I know Councillor Blanchard and I had a little sidebar on it. I'm sure Councillor Neal understands it. I've gone through it. You try to put a piece of riprap on a piece of sand, and they want you to remediate some other area in the Bay of Fundy to compensate for it. So I guess the whole point I'm making is, when are we gonna start some healthy skepticism of what CBCL are doing for us? You know, we were assured that CBLC didn't anticipate any problems. I see another thing here where they miscalculated the overburden on the Van Horn Trail. You know, they just seem to flow along, and errors don't seem to affect them much. And I think we...
Just a point of order, is that something that we should take to closed session just because it is a contract and it could cause jeopardy or financial loss to CBCL? We should probably, point taken, we should probably save that for closed session discussion out of essence for them and what we may say. But point taken. Any other member of council? Councillor Neal?
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. Just to clarify, the off-the-cuff solution, that's coming from CBCL or DFO?
Passamaquoddy Recognition Group.
That was their suggestion. Okay.
So to be fair, so the DFO had said that the Passamaquoddy Recognition Group had proposals in their line of work with their, in the knowledge. And so they said that we should get in contact with them to see if we can come up with a partnership that will satisfy DFO. We just haven't had the time to find one, or I haven't heard what CBCL's recommendation is in connection with the Passamaquoddy Recognition Group.
Okay, thank you. And just again, in general, my big concern here would not be so much cost overruns, as we have no idea what that might look like, but more so, again, the timing issue. Again, as the CAO pointed out, one of these options was chosen based on the fact that the work could be done through the winter. And if this is adding months possibly to this, as again, we're questioning the process of EIAs, which I know can take quite a long time. So that would be my main concern at the moment.
Yeah, and it's not even the phasing of the project over the winter, it's also the funding. The funding is coming down to the wire too, right? So we're on the shot clock for that too, if this delays us.
But, Your Worship, I guess it is last minute, and so our funding partners may be able to work with us, but staff really haven't had enough time to get in touch with everybody and figured it all out. I just wanted to bring it to your attention, the public's attention, and we will continue to work on it and have a lot more answers in the near future.
Perfect. I think we'll have a more lengthy conversation, obviously, on this one. Anyone else? Okay. That will we'll move that one along, and we are now at economic development. So we'll go to Councillor Hurdle for the next one. No, it'll be Councillor Hurdle as per email circulated today.
Thank you, Your Worship. I got lost for a second there. Thank you very much. This is in reference to EBC 240605. and the subject is the Kerry rideshare proposal for St. Andrews. The background is Kerry is a PEI-based rideshare startup that has seen success in expanding services to rural areas in the Maritimes. They recently began service in the St. Stephen area with financial assistance from Future St. Stephen and were queried about offering services in St. Andrews. The fee for service is app-based and much like the better-known Uber and Lyft. Operating in large centers in PEI, the feasibility in a smaller population area like ours is undetermined. However, they are willing to pilot it over 5 months, starting July 1st weekend and continuing to the end of October. They are looking for council to support to commit $18,000 plus HST for 18 weeks of operation, which represents 1/3 of the cost. Please see the attached staff report for proposal for more details. The motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews agrees to an 18-week pilot project with Kerry Rideshare, which includes a financial contribution of $18,000 to come out of the Economic Development Budget. And I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Hurdle. Are we going to second her, or you raise your hand? No, but do you want me to get a seconder first? Yeah, okay. You were excited. Councillor Neal seconded it. Now, Mr. Spear, for you.
Sorry, Your Worship, we'd originally put on the agenda to go to closed session because Kerry was quite open about the cost of this project, but that goes back to Councillor Weir's discussion on something that, is private information. So we can continue this, but if you feel that you want to discuss more of some of the information they shared, we really should go to closed for that. So I just asked council not to mention some of the numbers that were provided.
So that's the breakdown?
Well, their breakdown and stuff, sure.
Myself, I would like to refer to the breakdown. So,
Yeah.
Councillor Weir.
Perhaps that's not necessary. I'll keep this as short as I can.
Microphone, Councillor Weir.
Okay. Get a little enthusiastic sometimes. And this is not enthusiasm. On November 18th, 2020, Hugh Fleming introduced legislation into the House to allow ride-sharing services in the province, and under the condition that municipalities enact bylaws to the drivers and services will need to meet the requirements of the local bylaws. Under the amendments, rideshare drivers will need to undergo a check of their driving record, Class 4 license, clean driver's abstract, safety inspection on their vehicle at the start of service and every year thereafter. Fredericton went ahead and was the first one to put a bylaw in place. St. John followed them. Then Quispamsis said, well, we got 2 bylaws now to use as a guideline. They started working on it. The verbiage says municipal or local governments would be required to create bylaws that set out the parameters of vehicle for hire services. On December 18th, the last day of sitting of the House in 2020, the Motor Vehicle Act was amended to add Section 197.1. No vehicle for hire company shall carry on business or facilitate the offer of vehicle for hire services within the territorial limits of a local authority unless authorized to do so by the local authority. And in just looking at the City of Fredericton's bylaw and the City of St. John's bylaw, they have very detailed bylaws that dictate how this service is provided. And that was the reason I withdrew from making the motion. It's contrary to the Motor Vehicle Act. They have to have TNC insurance, which transport company insurance. The insurance kicks in when the driver signs on to the app. Anyway, I've got a whole package. I didn't get my final answer until mid-afternoon, at which time I spoke to a gentleman in Fredericton and I asked him if Section 197.1 had been repealed. He said no, it had not been, and that every municipality had to have a set of bylaws before one of these companies could operate within the municipality. So that's it. I'll provide a copy of this to Mr. Spear. It's not all the information, but it is a copy of the Motor Vehicle Act and related news releases.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ware. I will say that the concern about this is when they get the license, they're actually kitting it at the Department of Motor Vehicles who's giving them the license. So, but that is the legislation. But I'm also thinking Dial-A-Ride is a car share program as well. You're paying a small fee and you're getting in a car with someone with their personal car. What would be the difference other than it's used app-based and you're paying more? It's still a ride share.
That's the precise difference. A vehicle for hire company means a person who uses or offers a technology platform to facilitate the offer of vehicle for hire services. So it is an app. If you use an app, you're caught.
Okay, what's really interesting is it's an active conversation right now with Dial-A-Ride. Not so much with Dial-A-Ride as much as the Regional Service Commission is they're providing funding for a new app of up to $50,000, which they were trying to get Dial-A-Ride to be on. And if they did get on that, then they would be contrary at that point based on what you just said. So, the St. Stephen's already has carried. Do they have a bylaw on this already or no? Do we know? Probably not. We probably have a chance to check.
I'm sorry, Your Worship and Council, I wasn't aware of these amendments to the Motor Vehicle Act. I'm going to say St. Stephen probably doesn't because it wasn't initiative of their town, it was initiative of future St. Stephen.
Okay, sounds good. So what we could do is we could definitely do our, based on this, our homework, since it's a new document that Mr. Spear hasn't had the chance to look through, and he can follow up as well with the provider to find out, to make sure that it is legal within the town of St. Andrews or wherever they're operating. Councillor Heenan.
Worship, I followed on social media that they've already begun service here.
Correct, as of last Friday, yep.
Yep, thank you.
4 p.m. Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for enlightening on that, Councillor Weir. Last meeting we had, we discussed this, and there was a lot of questions that were left on the table for us. One of the points that I brought up was when I went to Fredericton for that training on rural transportation. There was a lot of enlightenment, and I did know that rural transportation was designated down to the RSCs. So I was hoping that staff would have picked up on that and directed this request to the RSC. But I went on today and printed off the rural transportation mandate from the government of New Brunswick, dated June 23rd, and this is the implementation guide. And according to 2.4 Regional Commission Responsibility Level 2 on page 13, financial management, RSCs will be responsible to develop annual financial plans that support their regional transportation strategies, recognizing that public transportation is not financially self-sustaining. The RSCs will need to determine their level of investments and will be eligible to receive provincial funding support noted above to offset the costs. So again, I don't understand why this is in front of us when it should be in front of the RSCs for their funding. Thank you.
Perfect. Just a point of order. You may have said that, but council direction was for them to come back and get more information. Not one individual of council can direct staff. It has to be of a whole. So that's why staff has brought this back. But point taken, again, we did talk about that it is under their under their portfolio. Transportation is one. Does it mean it's solely them? No, but they should be taking a leadership role and having these negotiations to try to get it across the region if this is the platform that is best. So point taken on that for sure. Councillor Blanchard.
Oh, I motion to table until we until town staff has the opportunity to touch base with the province with regards to the amendments of the legislation that's been brought forward.
I think that's a good motion, Councillor Blanchard. Is there a seconder for that one? We've got to vote for. We'll go Deputy Mayor Akaji. All in favor of tabling? That's everybody. This has been tabled. Okay, so that gets us back to new business. Now we're going to the trail project overage, Mr. Spear.
So Your Worship, just following up on the trail project, and gave you all papers, forgot to keep one for myself, but okay, thank you. So council approved, so the original budget for the trail was $1.1 million, and we have 80% sharing by Infrastructure Canada and the province of New Brunswick. So when we went to the original tender, we thought it would be close to the 1.1 million, but it came in at $700,000, including engineers' fees, which was great. And so a couple of weeks later, we added two components, which was the Bar Road and reshaping of Cemetery Lane. That brought up the total expected cost to about $953,000. Now, the way we do tenders is called unit pricing tenders. And so they don't just give a flat quote for finishing the project. They'll say if there's just, the engineers say there should be this much gravel, this much asphalt, this many trees removed, this different things like that. And so the list is long, and then it's based on quantities. And lots of times we save, and sometimes we go over. So what ran into here was that once they started mulching the trees for the Diana Drive portion that goes from from the ball field, I guess, over to the Bar Road, the forest layer was tremendously thicker than what they had originally planned, and it had brought in tremendously more loads of pit run gravel to shape that they had to go down further. The only way CBCL would have been able to do that is if they had cut down the trees in advance and gone down to pit holes. And so if you remember, it was fully forested at the time before we awarded the contract, so it would have been a little harder for them to do that. But it still is unfortunate. We do have a 10% contingency built in, but that's been used up because of this. And so they're almost done the main portion, which is from the ball field to Bar Road. And there should be very little surprises for the rest because they are able to dig down and look at the Bar Road portion and then paving at at Lang Maid Park. There won't be any cost overruns there. So your originally proposed $953 or approved $953,000 by resolution. Now it's coming in at about $1,040,000, which is within the budget, but it's over what you had offered in the original motions. It's within the procurement policy that I could follow the budget, but with such a difference, I want to make sure you're aware, and no need of a formal motion, but if you're okay with continuing with that, would be good. What the option would be is one of the components that we added was the reshaping of that portion that goes from Cemetery Road up to the ball field, that they thought the slope of the committee thought it was too extreme to meet this, so it has to be 5%, and I think it was at 7%. And so they're hoping to do that. In order to save, we could cut it and then redo it next year. But I'm looking at, we're going to be right about at budget, maybe slightly over by the time all the bills are in. And so I'm just looking for what you would like to do with that. If you'd like to cut that component on the bar on Cemetery Road that connects it to the upper parking lot of the ball field, so right across from the exit to Katie's Cove, if you know what I mean, and that's the reshaping. Or would you like to continue knowing that you'll probably be very close to what we allowed in the full budget?
Council, over to you. I guess just when we awarded, remind me when we did the request for proposals, was there, I think we're stuck, but like Was there multiple companies that submitted on this one? Remind me.
Yes, but there's 3 or 4 that
It's just-
submitted on it, and they're still charging the lowest price per unit. So it was just underestimated how much gravel was going to be needed. So they're still charging the lower price. It's just now they need 2 or 3 times more than they originally thought.
Okay, so the other request, not that we could do anything about it now, they would have had to add more onto theirs as well then. Okay, so it's not like they submitted a low bid, now they're higher priced than the next lowest bidder, right? So what I'm hearing is every bid would have been increased as a result of this.
Yes.
Okay, because they followed the engineer's amount
Well,
required.
that's right. The engineer's
yeah.
estimate
Yep.
of how much each
That makes sense,
component
so-
is, yeah.
So it's not being unfair to a company that maybe came second right under it. So, okay, thanks for that clarification. Council, over to you. Councilor Heaton.
Your worship and council, as we've heard tonight many a times, everything is costing more and more. So this really isn't a surprise. I'm just very glad that it's still under our original budget. And I don't see any choice but to finish myself, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
I think finishing will have to happen. The question is about delaying the grade of the trail that goes kind of from the ball field, we'll call it, towards down Cemetery is the grade towards Cemetery, I guess, is the best explanation of it. Council, again, over to you on that. To delay the project, or go ahead. Councilor Ware.
Councillor Ware, your microphone, please.
The cost of mobilizing and demobilizing for a construction company to come in and do it in another phase, it's just going to increase the cost that much more. We got the lowest price per unit. The units were underestimated. I don't know why the overburden come out. And by overburden, I refer to what they were calling the soft material on the top of the bedrock was so much thicker than they anticipated. And I find that disappointing. But to ask a company to mob and demob twice is just going to drive the costs up that much more. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Just to chime in, I think that doing the whole project now is key. It's too bad it's a little bit more expensive than we thought, but being able to designate it as accessible grade all the way from the Bar Road to Water Street would be really exciting. And there were some errors made, I guess, and accessibility wasn't quite as high on our radar back a few years ago. So this is a chance to kind of remedy that and also get that accessibility designation, which is really exciting. Goes along with the washroom and the bird watching platform and the exercise park. St. Andrews wants to be an accessible community, an inclusive community. So and also I would agree with Councillor Weirs to put it off till next year and then do it again. It's going to be more expensive than to get it all done at once. So thank you, Your Worship.
thank you. Anyone else? So how many would like to just continue with the plan, knowing the cost? Yeah, okay. There we go. We don't. Let's go to the Princess Royal and Pagan Street, no parking. I know we had no parking signs. We've had some feedback from the neighbors there who would technically have better access to their properties, but they are against this.
Yeah, Your
so
Worship.
it was a concern for them.
Yeah, last meeting, when we amended the four-way stop down on Water Street, we also added, at staff suggestion, that that there be no parking placed on Pagan and Street and Princess Royal down below water, between Water Street and the shore. And it was on some feedback that we were having trouble with, there was a sign there originally a few years ago, just in one section. The road is extremely narrow, and it does make it hard if there's a car parked there for one vehicle to get by. It is two-way driving. But and then we're having an occasional problem where boaters that didn't have mooring in town were unloading their boat off the boat ramp and then leaving their car or truck and trailer park there for a few days, and so blocking off things. And so that was town staff solution, but it did expand beyond where the original signs were originally, which was down by the yacht club. Again, thinking that it would meet some safety concerns. But we have heard from several residents who either using it as a secondary, because most of their homes are very close to the road in that section of town. So visitors and stuff have no place to park. They can't get a second vehicle in their driveway. And some of them are calling it an inconvenience. So that's just the feedback at the end of last week. So I was just trying to get into what council would like to do. There's pros and cons. Staff says the safety issue is important, but the people down there are less concerned about that than convenience, because it's so hard to find parking this time of year, and that people would have to go quite a ways that are visiting them to find parking. There's parking on Water Street and things, but through the summer, it's just, even that end of town, that far down past Augustus is still pretty busy.
Not to put you on the spot, but has staff's position changed, or is it still a safety hazard?
It's a safety hazard. I guess it's not fire vehicles can get through. It's narrow. There's no doubt about it. And I think we have to have no parking on at least one side of the road, to be fair. But right now we have it on both, and maybe if staff will revisit it and maybe remove some of them. We should amend the bylaw, but we're not prepared to do that tonight.
Let's let, by all means, Deputy Mayor, but I was thinking maybe let staff go and review it and come back with a recommendation with Deputy Mayor.
Just want to add that there's a few seniors down there that have, what do you call those, visiting nurses?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they are unable to park there. And it makes it very difficult for the seniors that are down there. And I know for visiting, like if they're sick or whatever, going down to visit them from the churches or whatever, it is difficult to find a spot, as you say. And but I would say the nurses, the visiting nurses, extramural, I couldn't remember the name, but they have been down there and they've not been able to park and have to carry their things down there, and it makes it very difficult too. Just wanted to.
So council, that makes sense. Maybe staff can come back after they reviewed it and make a recommendation on what might work better. Does that work for everybody? Just for this essence of time? Councilor Harland?
So have we removed parking on one side at least?
Not yet. I just wanted to get council's feel for it tonight.
Okay.
So we removed, we've got it no parking on both sides right now.
Right.
And which is causing a headache.
Right.
To be honest, for some of the residents.
Right, and I have heard that. And you're recommending that staff bring back some recommendations, particularly regarding
I'm actually
safety.
fine with CAO discretion, but we would have to amend it as a result of this still. But
Right.
I'm fine if we're not enforcing the bylaw, or taking the signs down. Personally, it came from staff. Staff can come back and tell us what's better, right? That's the way I...
Yeah, and staff, went under good intentions for some of the stuff down there, but again, it was done on the fly. Maybe it would have, lesson learned, we'll say that maybe in future we should have a little more consultation, but it was the summer season approaching and some of the issues we were down there, we created some issues with others while solving it for some.
Right. So just to clarify, potentially asking staff to make some recommendations and CAO discretion to make some determinations, or does it have to come back to us in August? Because that's a part that I'm unclear about.
It sounds like what I'm guessing is staff will take down the signs on one side of the street, come back with something, since no one's got strong
Okay.
opinions. It's whatever works,
That's,
right?
I would be very supportive of that.
Yeah. Councilor Heated.
Yes, Your Worship, I support Councillor Harland. I believe there has to be a happy medium, but I did not want to wait until August to come back and deal with this, because the summer would be 3/4 over. So I would definitely support a compromise and take down half and then do a report.
Sounds good. That's what we
Thank you.
move ahead with. Thank you, Councilor Heated. All right, so that takes us through new business. We are now into question period. Is there anyone online, Mr. Spear, that would like to maybe do a call? We'll go back to them. At this point, I'm doubting it. Yeah. Would anyone from the audience like to ask a question pertaining to tonight's agenda? No. Thank you. Appreciate that. Councillor, Deputy Mayor's comments. Councillor Heaton.
Yes, Your Worship. I don't know how to even say thank you to the folks who put Canada Day together this year, but I have to applaud the fire department. I have to applaud Merv. I have to applaud the town staff. I have to applaud everyone. And they worked under very difficult circumstances, very hot, very no power, hearing complaints, etc. And I think it went off considering that a squirrel caused this problem. I think they did a very good job. And our fire department went from 4 o'clock in the morning until 10:30 or 11 last night. And I just think that that they needed a round of applause, because I don't think there'd be any other municipality who could put on a show like we had last night. And I just want to say a big thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heaton. Well said, and I'll just say that when I was speaking, I'll echo that, so we can keep obviously moving, but it was, and Councillor Neal obviously was very, very busy, but Mervyn Hanselpacker's first time organizing Canada Day all by himself? Did he have Tressa as well last year?
He had Tressa
yeah,
his
his first
year.
time all by himself, and it was a flawless transition, so needs to be, Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. It was a great day yesterday, and I thank everybody, but I'd also like to thank Norma Stewart, because she stepped in for when we lost Carrie, and she was able to do, I visited there at the Ross Museum, and they were doing a great job without power, without, they did a wonderful job. The staff there kicked in and helped out. They were very friendly. It went on just like as smooth as it could go. So I'd like to thank her for stepping up to the role of filling Carrie's boots, which were big boots to fill. But, and again, I thank staff because they put up tents, took down tents, did the garbage, all that stuff. And I enjoyed being with the fire team, serving breakfast yesterday. It was awesome. They had a beautiful breakfast, and many people commented. So thank you very much to everybody that put it forward, and to Mervyn who carried it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Neal.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add a special thank you to the students from the 2025 graduating class from the high school that came and helped with the firemen's breakfast as well. They were there from 6 a.m. till probably 11 a.m. and their contribution was absolutely amazing. They certainly went above and beyond, and their help was appreciated greatly. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Anyone else? Councillor Ware.
I guess just a quick question. I've heard the comment about moving everything to August. Have we made a permanent decision that no council meetings in the month of July?
I think we need a formal motion forward. But
when we amended the procedural bylaw earlier in the winter, we can still call a special meeting if everyone misses me, but right now we don't have to laugh so hard, Councillor Neal. But anyway, the next scheduled meeting is August the 5th, I think it is, the Tuesday after the long weekend. If there's a need, we can call meetings, but reminder, there are some municipal plan consultation meetings going on over the next couple of weeks that council is encouraged to attend.
Perfect, and just council, be aware, just based on obviously, we got to encourage democracy, healthy debate, but I think you can expect that August one to be long as a result. Deputy Mayor, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I do. I want to thank Minister's Island for inviting me over to the grand opening of the Van Horn collection. It was a great day, and I was honored because 3 Mi'kmaq elders came down from Papineau First Nations, and they were there as well. So it was nice to be there on the opening day for the exhibit, and the fact that this was the first stop on its way. And Frank McCarroll, who was from Macadam, came as well. He represented the CPR station up in Macadam and came down to show his support as well. So it was a great day, and I thank the Minister's Island staff for inviting me, and I really had an enjoyable day. And I represented you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I was at the Katie's Cove Summer Beach Party, the the ribbon cutting of a washroom. First one I've ever done that one, and that was absolutely blew my mind how many people attended that. I don't know what the final number was, but if you told me that throughout the course of the afternoon it was 500 people, I would believe it. It was definitely 400 based on events that I've held with 400 when we're clicking it. It was very, very busy. So appreciate it. I couldn't be on island and land the same time, so appreciate that.
I did show up later, but you were supposed to save me.
Any other member of council? Okay, thank you. I will just leave my comments just to say that the CAO and I tomorrow are meeting with NB Power officials. If anyone is still following this right now or watches it after the power outages that we're experiencing, I'm told that there are a number of different causes, and the last cause was not related to the previous. But with that being said, obviously the amount of power outages we've had as a community are completely unacceptable. Not just for personal people that are running generators and things like that, but I would estimate the losses in revenue to the business community is now exceeding $100,000 based on yesterday, easily. So it's again a lot of different reasons, but I plan to, with Mr. Spear, dive into those and find out if any of these reasons are expected to continue in our community. And as well, just express so they understand that this can't continue. It's in my time being back in the community or even growing up, I don't recall such unreliable service as this community's had. Sometimes things are out of control; they're one-offs, but this is a lot of one-offs in the last 6 months. Those storms certainly were those storms, but we're consistently on sunny days now having power outages for different reasons. So we did try to have this meeting well over a month ago. We did reach out. The CEO of NB Power said that they would follow back up. We never did get that meeting over the last month. So VP of Operations, Key Account Manager, all of them are coming tomorrow. So we will have meetings and hopefully we'll have more answers for the community and obviously make sure that they're aware of the impacts it is. It's not just lost sales. I've talked to restaurant owners that were prepping food that lost all of the food they're prepping for the day. They're in stoves half cooked and they were ruined. So it goes on a lot more than that. I know there's lots of different ways it impacts other businesses, but I can completely understand the expression and as a business, the frustration as a business manager of this community as well. I can tell you that we're feeling financial loss from it as well. So I'm with them, right? And I'm with all of you. So it's not a municipal service at all. We have no power over NB Power, but we are the voice of the municipality. And I think we need to get vocal and let them know that although they may be one-offs, that we need a complete look. And the other thing is, it does spark a lot of questions. Why is it just St. Andrews? And what is our system like compared to everyone else's? And get into a lot of details of that. So more to come, but just wanted to really hit that issue because it is impacting people. It is the time of year where people make money in order to keep their business going in the winter. And it is really putting some businesses probably close to on their knees at this point. So more to come. My phone died. So is it 9:39? At 9:30 p.m., I'll be looking for a mover so council can go into closed session as per Local Governance Act 68(1)C, information that could cause financial loss or gain to a person or the local government or could jeopardize negotiations leading to an agreement or contract. So I have a mover, please. I've got Councillor Gubishel and Councillor Heenan. All in favor of going to closed session, please signify by saying aye. And we'll take a moment for technology to shut down.